The second half of Season 6 was kicked off by Blood of My Blood, but no one died. Well, maybe Dany's horse did, and several whites got smashed and burned up by Benjen, but no humans, though there were some close calls, especially at the Sept. The High Sparrow diffused the need for violence, giving a nod to the god of death, whom he doesn't even believe in, most likely, by saying in his own way, "Not today." But the day is coming when violence will happen on a large scale. Cersei will choose violence, and soon. Dany has serious momentum and a gigantic army, and Benjen warns that the Night King will find his way into the realms of men, one way or another. The end of every season of Game of Thrones is marked by big action moments, reveals, and of course, deaths, spanning several plot lines. As we approach those climaxes, we get to play with and analyze the various plot arcs and their supporting details, supplementing it all with our book knowledge, and that gives us the opportunity to play guessing games as to what's going to happen next in both HBO's Game of Thrones and George R. R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire. So welcome back. Welcome back, Ashaya.
Thank you.
And welcome back to the Radio Westeros team. Hey, guys, look at you all together.
Hello.
Yeah, we just we've all been to Balticon, so I'm broadcasting from Lady Guinevere's HQ. Really glad to be back.
Right on. That's really excellent. And for people who don't know, Ashaya and I were also at Balticon, so we all got to meet each other for the first time. That was great. We met a lot of other people.
Mm-hmm.
And
like people from Wars and Politics of Ice and Fire
that's
who
right.
we've worked with.
Wars, Politics, Ice and
Rio,
Fire, Reddit.
Starcalypse from
Starcalypse from
Washington.
Washington. Yeah, there's so many people. It's
Couldn't even name them all.
big shout out to our friends in the A Song of Ice and Fire Facebook group, the big group, 45,000+ people, who we met a bunch of people from there as well, who we only known online. So it was a really great experience. We're going to have to set aside some time to talk about it, either in an episode or we're supposed to get a recording of one of the panels we did from Balticon. And if they come through with that, we're going to build an episode around that where we discuss some other Balticon things.
Yeah, we'll see how much of that is salvageable. We were supposed to repeat the questions that people asked, and we just all forgot.
Yeah, but we could edit that in maybe, so we'll see. So no promises there, but we're going to spill as much as we can. And we'll talk a little bit about some things that happened at Balticon as well during this episode because they're relevant. The main thing that was related to this episode, this book to show episode we're about to do here, is that all of us got to watch the episode together in a big room at Balticon, a big auditorium, maybe 300, 400 people in there. It was really fun. There was a lot of people singing the theme song, including myself, and that was really fun. Some people did one part, some people did the other, and a lot of crowd interaction was pretty fun when it was confirmed that the Blackfish took River Run, because, there was a little bit of doubt since maybe Littlefinger was lying. Someone just, a random voice yelled out, "Yeah, he did!" And that was just a great moment of everybody. There was a lot of laughter and just agreement. Yeah. And there were cheers for Gilly when she said her line about, I'm mad that people can treat people like this and get away with it. And there was big cheers for that. There were lots
for Melissa Tarley.
For Melissa, yeah, that's right. There was cheers for stealing Heartsbane, massive cheers for Benjen, and maybe even bigger cheers for Needle. I mean, for Arya pulling Needle out, that was just, people were like it was like, finally. I think a lot of people were just waiting for that moment. And then there were gasps at some of the visions, especially the "burn them all." That was just, whoa, that was pretty incredible.
The only negative scene that I witnessed was the crowd, a little grumble crossing the crowd during that incest Jaime Cersei scene, a little bit of discontent at more romance and incest.
Yeah. But as big as the cheers were for Game of Thrones episode, the cheers for George R.R.'s reading were louder. We won't spoil any details, except to say that it was the first time the chapter's ever been read anywhere. So it was a completely new chapter. We got the scoop. We'll be making an episode on it soon, and we'll talk a little bit more about it at the end of the episode. We won't even say what kind of chapter it is, who's in it, but we will say, I think all four of us maybe even agree to some extent that it's our favorite chapter from When so far. And maybe that part of that might just be the excitement of it being new, but trust us, it's got some stuff going on.
It was a brilliant chapter. I think everyone that was there and listened all loved it, really.
Yeah. There were more gasps and cheers, and it was just, there was a lot of excitement and emotion and some great reveals. So we learned a few other spoilery things while we were there. And we'll share some of those details after the credits. Same time, not related to the chapter, but because that will be in a separate episode, as I said, but related to A Song of Ice and Fire in general. Some of it relates to the show. Some of it's just random tidbits that we thought we'd throw out there, because there's not really a great place to put them. Might as well put them here. But of course, as usual, that will be at the end of the episode after the credits and after the trailer discussion for episode 7. That will also include some callbacks to the preseason trailers, because as we get to the end of the season, those preseason trailer scenes that we haven't seen yet, they get a little more narrowed down, where they, like at the beginning, you can say, well, that could an episode anywhere from episode 1 to 10. Well, now it's 7 to 10, and soon it'll be 8 to 10. So things are getting narrowed down, and of course, the end of the season is always set to be more exciting. So let's start with the first scene of the episode. This breaks the pattern of every episode starting at the wall so far this season.
Someone said that was wrong, by the way.
Oh, really?
Someone said another episode started with Bran and Bloodraven, and I forgot to mention it to you first.
Oh, okay. Well, my bad. Oh. Well, then most of the episodes started. 4 out of 5 episodes started at the wall. They all start at the north, and that one follows this pattern. It continues where we left off with the hold the door scene. And that, of course, gets people excited and emotional because it calls back the epic ending to episode 5. So, Bran starts off the scene. He's still downloading, processing the vision. We'll talk about the vision separately. So, start off with the scene. Now, Lady Gwen, we'll start with you. You have some great thoughts here.
I just, the Benjen reveal was huge, of course. It's funny watching it all together. I think we all had a little bit of a doubt when they first showed him on his horse and he spoke, because his voice sounded a little different, probably because it was muffled, but there was this real tension until the actual reveal happened. Everyone was excited. I've talked to people who only watch the show, don't know anything about, Cold Hands or the books or anything, and they were still excited. No one seems to have forgotten Benjen in the long years since he was last seen on screen. So there was a neat scene with a rabbit that I just wanted to mention, because it came right after Sam and Gilly spoke about hunting rabbits north of the wall. So there was, they spoke about that. Then you had this scene of Benjen skinning a rabbit, which I thought was also a little bit of a throwback to a scene from season 3 or 4, where Mira and Asha were arguing about the best way to skin a rabbit.
Oh, yeah.
Seems like that's quite a thing north of the wall. So.
I did forget about that, and there was 2 women doing it, so that's great.
That is really cool. So we have to unfortunately spend a few minutes discussing this whole Cold Hands as Benjen thing. It seems like the showrunners kind of, I don't want to say they ruined it, but they caused some confusion after the episode by making some comments about they called him Benjen Cold Hands, and a lot of people for a long time have thought that Benjen was Cold Hands. But Yoke Boy, we've got the proof from the man himself, don't we?
Yes, in the original Dance with Dragons draft that George submitted to his editor, Anne Grohl, she wrote a kind of liner note about Cold Hands. She said, "Is this Benjen?" And George said no, and he circled it, no in capital letters, made it very clear to his editor, Anne. Pair this up with the Children of the Forest assertion that Cold Hands is very old. And it seems that in book canon, Cold Hands isn't Benjen, we don't think. However, on the inside of the episode, D&D called him Cold Hands Benjen, as you said, which has just confused everyone, I think. I think all 4 of us agree that Benjen and Cold Hands have been merged in show canon, but will be separate in the books.
Of course, that's a common thing for them to do.
It's the law of conservation of characters, as Lady Gwen brought up. And
effect here.
I think it's perfectly sensible. I think it makes a lot of sense. I'm very happy that they did it. I think probably pretty few people would complain. Our only complaint would be that they didn't make it clear in the inside the episode. Yeah,
that maybe it could have maybe been a little clearer. But it's also interesting, for all we know, Benjen, something similar has happened to Benjen in books. We just haven't been reunited with him yet. He we don't think, as much as we are confident that Benjen is not Cold Hands, because me and George said so. Like, why would we have a different opinion than that? He could, sure, he could be lying. He could be, but why?
He doesn't lie.
We don't have.
He's been known not to lie.
He's when he doesn't want to say something, he's evasive about it. If he
keep reading.
Yeah, he'll say something like that.
Not sure.
So when he gives a straight answer like that, really, there's no evidence he lies to his fans. There's a pattern there, and the pattern is he doesn't just straight up lie like that. It also just doesn't make a lot of sense why he would lie about it.
Mm-hmm.
From where I'm
to his editor, especially.
Yeah, to his editor.
That's
that's
right.
his star. Like, why would he lie to her? It's not like he knew that page was going to be put up on the internet. People would see that the proof of him saying no to Cole. He's like, I'm going to make sure this gets on the internet. You know, I mean. If George says something, we should believe it, you know. Maybe one day we'll find evidence that George has been lying about a bunch of things. But unless that happens, we have no reason to doubt him. So, but still, there's a lot we can get out of this from potentially understanding the books. He describes what happens. He's stabbed by a sword of ice, and the children jam a dragon glass dagger in his heart to stop the spread of the magic, which seems maybe a little backwards, because that's how we see them creating the White Walkers. But hey. We're not here to dissect the hidden magics of the children.
I'm wondering how soon they had to arrive.
Yeah, you wonder.
It must be pretty slow.
Were they keeping track of him because he's a Stark or something? Is there something to his Starkness that matters? And is that why Benjen's been missing? There's a lot of theories in the fandom about. No one thinks Benjen's just gone forever. I mean, a few people do, but the vast majority of fans expect him to return, or we find out his fate.
I don't want an answer there.
So, yeah, I mean, that would be something. That'd be kind of neat. Maybe we just see a
I don't think he's gone forever. I just hope so.
Yeah, and his Stark blood is potentially a big factor in all this, and we'll just have to see. Cold Hands theories, as far as who Cold Hands is in the books, this is a decent time to spend a minute or two on this. Night King is one option, since he was a Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, according to the legend, and the Cold Hands is dressed like a Black Brother, so that would fit. One of the Raven's teeth is another popular theory.
He's one of Bloodraven's men that he took to the wall.
And Bloodraven's men were so loyal to him that some of them took the Black with him. So you'd think that those would be amongst the men that followed him, that supported him at the wall. It would partly explain why he became
beyond the wall.
And beyond the wall, that's right. It would explain partially, too, it's kind of an aside to say this, but how Bloodraven rose so high so fast at the wall. I mean, he was King's Hand. He's part Targaryen. There's a lot of reasons, and he's a great leader. So that explains a lot of it. But he would also he brought his own men. They would have voted for him, too. So he even brought his own voters.
We're like complaining about rabid ravens and sad ravens.
And finally, the least interesting theory is that he's just some unknown ranger. He could be someone like Stone Snake with a name.
They say he's very old, and I don't know.
Yeah,
but I even think Bloodraven is very old to them. I think that's closer.
The line is, Bran says, but they'll kill him because he can't come in the cave. By the way, that's why Benjen didn't come to the cave earlier, because he probably couldn't go in. But the line is, they'll kill him. They killed him long ago. So long ago, maybe they know that they're talking to a child, and they phrase it long ago in children brand.
Not children, but children.
As in a kid, a human child's terms. But if it's a long ago from the point of view of children of the forest who lived for a long, long time, then that's a long, long time. So, yeah. Anyway, Cold Hands, Benjen back in the fold. But that's just beginning. We haven't seen him. We saw him kick some white butt, but we haven't seen what else he's going to do yet. So that's a big what if and what's coming. We'll just have to wait and see.
Should we call him Cold Benjen?
Ben Hands. Oh. Cold Ben. You guys write us with some suggestions. We're kind of flailing here. So how about the visions? Bran's visions. Those were really big, huh? That was pretty cool stuff.
It's exciting. We weren't expecting it at all to go down like this. No. We were. With the name Blood of My Blood, I think we were all anticipating some Lyanna Stark action, and not this montage with a lot of Aerys at all.
Yeah, and it's like you said, Lyanna, and we knew in advance that mid-Ned, we've got young Ned, mid-Ned, and old Ned. Those are the three from the different visions. Well, two from the visions and one, all from the visions. Yeah. But also old Ned, of course, is regular
old
Ned. Sean
Ned.
Bean. And mid-Ned, the one at Tower of Joy, we knew he would appear in this episode from spoilers and trailers ahead of time, but it was a trick because it was his same scenes that we've already seen, with one exception. But let's go through these in order.
Yeah. Okay. We start off. This is the majority of these repeat. We're not going to repeat them every time they repeat.
Right. We of course slowed it down and
Yeah,
freeze framed and
freeze-frame,
just looked at every single one.
But it starts with a Bran's fall. Then it goes right to the pyromancers, who obviously that repeats many times.
Yes.
And then it goes to Ares, our first shot of Ares. Yeah, wildfire. It goes to our first shot of Ares, which is really exciting. Things of note is that he doesn't have the long fingernails that he's known for. Or he generally doesn't look as deranged.
Yeah, he looked more
A little tame.
healthier.
Yeah, healthier.
His voice was loud and authoritative. Burn them all! That was great. That was just very emphatic and exciting.
I guess I'll continue on then.
Yeah.
We get on to the hard home whites.
Lots of white. Even Carsey was in there for a second.
Yeah, for a second. There's a brief shot of John in there, just barely. Sometimes just a little bit of him. Sometimes he was prominently in frame, but they're like
kind of from behind. Yeah,
they're quite literally one frame, one shot. You go to the right and it's gone.
Yeah.
Then we have Night King.
Lots of Night
Come
King.
at me, bro.
And then touching Bran, a couple other.
There's that. Fist of the First Men, just generally lots of White and White Walker scenes, interspersed again with this burn them all, Drogon in the air, dragon over King's Landing, the dragons being born with Daenerys, the back to White Walker stuff.
And the dragons being born stuff is interspersed. A good catch by watching her. Where's the line here? I can't see it in our notes. Where did that go? Anyway, I don't see that in my notes. Oh, here it is. Duke Chronic noticed a couple of things, and one of them was that the lines is the baby White Walker converting a baby is right next to Dany's dragons, which is baby dragons, baby White Walkers. So that's pretty cool.
That's funny.
That's a real nice catch there. And we've got Ravens, the shot of Ravens when. Right before Sam kills the first White Walker we see get killed. And the wildfire eruption. There's, out of all those scenes, all of them are from the past, except for two. Some of them are from the Ares' reign, right before, we see Jaime killing him, and we see the stuff like that. And but the scenes from the future appear to be there's some sort of eruption of wildfire in the wildfire room where we see them before working in there. And so as book readers, you all maybe are familiar with the idea that there's hidden wildfire caches still in King's Landing. There's been a couple of references to that. We covered that in somewhat great detail in our Summer Hall episodes, and I was very confident at the time, and still am, that this is going to come up. There's some doubt that it will happen here, but I do think the stage is set, especially with the dragon over King's Landing. That shadow.
And the theory is that Daenerys would accidentally set off these caches of wildfire. Another common theory is that Cersei will have something to do with this burning, with the wildfire. We tend to lean towards Daenerys.
It could be both. I mean, I doubt Daenerys sets off the wildfire and Cersei also sets off the wildfire. But what I mean is that we could have both multiple functions for the wildfire. If it destroys King's Landing, seeing it, the talk of burn them all interspersed with so many scenes of Whites and White Walkers is like, well, is that the idea they're suggesting? Kill the White Walkers and the Whites with wildfire? I mean, that does seem like it would be fairly effective. It could get out of control. And I mean, you don't want to just spew wildfire in a forest area, right? Like, that would be awfully destructive. Better than letting the White Walkers overrun the kingdom, I suppose. Now, this also reminds us of some of the flashbacks from the House of the Undying. It's commonly thought that the scene with the Iron Throne in her vision is of snow falling on the Iron Throne, but watching her Stanklepoot suggests that it could be ash instead of snow, which is a very compelling idea, and it fits extremely well with what we're discussing right now.
Okay. Yeah, I think that is compelling. I like that angle a lot. I think it can be both. I don't know if anyone else has any thoughts. If we should move on to going on over more of the visions.
Yeah, let's keep going.
Okay. Then of course we have Ares' death.
We see it from multiple angles.
We see it from multiple angles, including the shadow on the wall.
Stabbing him on the ground, stabbing him from behind. There's like 4. I think we see it from 4 different angles, maybe. At least 3, perhaps 4.
And then, of course, we see Jaime on the throne.
Yes.
As he did.
So what we see a lot of is Stark and Targaryen, because we also see Bran. We haven't gotten to this yet, but Bran also sees his mother, his father, and Robb getting killed. And so there's a lot of Starks and a lot of Targaryens. Now, the World of Ice and Fire has all but ruled out the possibility that Jaime and Cersei are the children of Aerys somehow. But again, the show is not bound to that. The show could go that route, and the prominence of Jaime in these visions as the only non-White Walker, Stark, or Targaryen is kind of well. There's the pyromancers too.
Yeah, well, there's people interacting with White Walkers.
Yeah,
like Sam.
True. And Daenerys is there. Of course, she's a Targaryen. But there's some other little tidbits like that. But it does seem like that's a theme of the visions. So it's not very likely, but we thought we'd throw that out there as a possibility. Mm-hmm. And of course, we get Mid-Ned yelling about his sister. Where's my sister? And this is one of the few new scenes, although it's from the past, unlike the dragon over King's Landing and the wildfire eruption, which are both new and apparently in the future. We get a new Tower of Joy scene, or at least we're very confident it's from the Tower of Joy. And this is also an observation of Watcher Duke Chronic, who points out that you can see for just a second, you can see a hand turning itself over, and there's blood on it. It's not coming from something that they've touched. You can see what appears to be a body. There's another hand lying alongside it, and there's a lot of blood. Mm-hmm. So, of course, thinking about the bed of blood and Lyanna and the promise and all those things, it seems very likely that's what we're seeing. And this was partially confirmed, like I said, by this Watcher who noted that the rivets, you can see the rivets on the arm guard, the vambrace that Ned is wearing. You can see the coloring beneath it is green, which matches what we saw from Ned, and the rivets are in the same places. So that is something we were already pretty certain of. This just sort of seals the deal.
Some people thought for a moment that it might have been Aerys and Jaime. Aerys had multiple rings on, and it generally wasn't the clothes he had as well.
So that's an outside shot, but we think that the Ned and Lyanna thing is super, super likely, and I imagine most of you agree with that. So that's exciting, unless you just didn't see the visions and you wouldn't know necessarily. But there you go. That's pretty big news. We also see some shots of the ravens, and we see the three-eyed raven itself at one point, as in the not blood raven, but the actual, the raven, the bird. And then we see Leaf making the White Walkers. So there's a lot of stuff to unpack there, and it's kind of unclear. A lot of it's repeated.
In the same order.
Yeah, in the same order. So, Yoke Boy, let's let someone else besides me weigh in on this. And Shay, you've said some things, but I've been kind of going off on this for a bit. Let's get some other opinions.
Okay, I agree with the observations that you made, really, about the wildfire and the secret caches that could be there. To me, it looked like we're seeing the two biggest threats to mankind: the wildfire in King's Landing and the others in the north. So that's a kind of ice and fire thing going on, which would obviously fit the overarching theme. I did have one other... Oh, remember in the show canon, in the House of the Undying vision, it looks really ruined, that place, from my memory. It looks like there's been an explosion in that room. What do you think?
I think it might have been, yeah. I really, we probably should have gone back and looked at the House of Undying scene to look for other parallels, but yeah, it did seem like maybe that would explain, instead of the snow or ash, like the roof has been blown off or something like that, because it's just been destroyed utterly. That would fit pretty well.
And remember that the vision ended. Daenerys walked away from this kind of ruined, lonely throne and she went through the wall.
That's true.
That's a choice she made. So if we are looking at a ruined King's Landing here, I think we can have a good hint at the path Dany will take.
That's a good call, because and even we're maybe getting ahead of ourselves as far as this review goes, but Dario's question, as much as some people thought there wasn't much to take from that final scene with Daenerys, and it was just like a rah-rah, she's got her Dothraki, but Dario's question is really quite interesting. We'll get into it in more detail, but he brings up that she's never really been a ruler. She's just been a conqueror to this point. She hasn't successfully governed anything yet. And he's suggesting that maybe it's not in her nature. And if you look at the makeup of who she's bringing across, it's a lot of destruction, a lot of potential for destruction, a lot of unmanageable factors. And it might fit better for her to use that destructive power against the others rather than try to, set it loose in Westeros as a ruling entity. Now, another idea making the rounds that we touched on briefly is that Cersei will cause this massive destruction via wildfire, maybe something like what Aerys was calling for, but maybe succeeding, or maybe Jaime stops her, or somebody stops her. Presumably this would happen after Tommen dies, and she's really just lost it because the Valonqar prophecy has completely come true. She has no heirs. She has no, she has no kids. She's lost her grip on power. And it's a callback to season 2 when she was prepared to kill Tommen and herself as Stannis was seemingly about to win the Battle of the Blackwater. So she's shown already that she's willing to do that. So it's not just a random thought about how Cersei would react to losing everything. It does kind of seem like she would do that, take everyone down with her. She does seem to have that kind of vindictive streak. Yeah, burn them all. Do we have any other thoughts on that, on the visions? I'm sure there's going to be more once we see what's happening, once we get a little farther down the line. These last few episodes should shed some more light on it, but for now,
I think the only thing is just that they made it very abundantly clear that Bran knows how to destroy the White Walkers with Valyrian steel and with dragonglass.
That's true.
I've seen it repeated multiple times.
Yeah, that's a good point. So there's all these, and it potentially, as we've said, wildfire might be part of that. Part of the arsenal of use against the White Walkers, especially the Whites. They seem like they'd be.
And we even saw that
vulnerable.
mirrored because we see Benjen Cold Hands using fire against them, and right in that very scene.
Very effectively. That was a cool weapon he had. I don't know what the heck that was.
You said someone commented what it was.
I don't recall if the name.
A Japanese.
No, that was the sickle chain.
Oh, okay.
That one had. That was like a notch. That was a. I can't remember the name of that one. Yeah. But no, the chain one. I don't think that one was. I don't think they gave a name for that one. But it's very cool either way.
Not the thing that lit up then. No.
No, that was the other weapon is the one that name was given for.
Oh, okay.
So I guess we can move on. Let's take our first break in between scenes here, and we'll be right back to talk about Sam Gilly and the Tarly fam at Horn Hill. Okay. Well, this scene, I was unsure how the scene would go. I wasn't, I thought there had to be more to it than just meet up, drop off Gilly and Sam. I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't predict Heartsbane being stolen, but we all had high hopes for what the scene would look like and for other things. Shay, you have a lot of thoughts on what was going on in the scene. We all really liked the scene.
Yeah. I think it was my favorite scene, my favorite plot line. My favorite scene was the scene where Sam actually introduces Gilly to his mother and sister. But first I wanted to take a moment to shout out to the actors in it. There's James Faulkner as Randall Tarly with that big, booming voice.
Great casting.
Really perfect.
Jeez.
One of my favorite castings to date.
Gosh.
And he's known for Da Vinci's Demons, a show that I've seen a little bit of, but I'm more motivated now to watch all of.
Right.
Tell us if you watch it and if you recommend it. We have Samantha Spiro as Melessa Tarly. Some people were confused about her name, so that's her name, Melessa. Rebecca Benson as his sister Tala. Some people thought it was Tarla Tarly, which is a bit of a funny name, I think.
Tarla Tarly.
I did listen. It sounded like she said Tarla because it's like Tala.
Tala. Yes, the accent, yes.
And then my favorite, Freddie Stroma, who has been in a bunch of things that I've seen, and every time he's been typecast as this smarmy, too perfect sort of guy.
I guess that's the right role for
him. He was Cormac McLagan in Harry Potter, which, again, that role, he was the Bachelor in the show Unreal, and he was just the worst in the In-Betweeners too. So generally, I hope that we'll see more of him because he's good at being just perfectly insufferable.
Maybe we'll get a chance to see him take down something more important from 70 yards with a bow.
Yeah, we're going to go into how we think Dickon and Randall could come into play and could continue to be in the story as we continue on. One thing that I really liked right off the bat was that I personally was seeing this from Gilly's eyes. She sees this, Horn Hill is outrageously huge and glorious and green. And so you really see this disparity between what Gilly's used to and Tala Tarly, who says, you can stay in one of my bedrooms. And what's your color?
Yeah, and Gilly has never had a room at all.
She has a burlap sack.
And a sack, yeah. She's dressed in wool.
So that was really well done and humorous, but also it's sad at the same time. And as an aside, they went with gold and dark green, not midnight blue or silver.
She was so funny walking all.
Yeah, it was a very funny scene all throughout it, but to me there was this rippling undertone to this very happy scene that Sam's lying to his mother about this being her grandson. As she says, you'll be a maester like your father. You're like, no.
Don't be like your father, little baby.
Yeah.
Do not be like Craster.
And then Gilly, I think you can sense her discomfort with lying to these people who are being very nice to her, and maybe lying in general about this. And then throughout all that opening scene, there's this shadow of Randall who hasn't even deigned to appear.
Yeah, and he takes so long to say his first lines at the dinner. He just sits there in silence for a while, and he finally speaks up.
They do a good job of prolonging that tension and that fear there. And so overall, I really thought this was a funny scene, but also just a really emotional scene for me in like a really brutal, heart-wrenching way. And I have to say, people might think it's weird, but I cried more during that scene than I did in all the previous episodes combined. It was like very, and I was at the screening, you know, I'm at the show, so a little public.
You know, something that's just now occurring to me. This whole, I'm surprised no one else has mentioned it in our comments or anything from our show review or anything. Maybe I missed it, but this whole lying about who the baby belongs to is totally just setting up Ned Stark and Lyanna.
That's a great point. I can't believe we never hit on that.
It's really actually blatantly obvious now that I was like, oh my goodness.
That's great. That's really good.
So yeah, but of course that lie was, they just left, so they're not being forced to raise this child.
Yeah,
at least.
Although they are still raised, the tale is
it's still there.
They're not going to say, "Oh, this is my incest baby."
They're still sticking to the lie that it's his. That's right. So that's
and it is his. It's the same thing with, Ned and Jon. That Jon is still Ned's son. He raised him.
Absolutely.
And if Sam raises little Sam, that's his son.
And hopefully he's not like Craster. Yeah.
Yeah. Of course, we have
Craster Sam.
A line that everyone laughed so hard at. I think our father could learn a thing or two from your father.
I think that might have been the first time he spoke. I think he said enough of that.
Yeah, enough of that. Yeah.
He said it very gently. He wasn't like angry. He was just quiet. So let's talk about the theft of Heartsbane. That was the big surprise that. Heartsbane getting involved somehow was not a surprise. Valyrian steel is a bigger deal on the show, but I don't think many people saw this coming. This is blatant just theft.
I gotta say, I felt this like romantic tension in that scene, and so when Sam came bursting back through the door, I thought, they're gonna make sweet
Let's
sweet
bang
love.
one more time.
Yeah,
Let me get a real kid.
Sweet sweet love versus bang, and
I'm still thinking of It's Always Sunny.
And they're gonna have. The fat pink mask.
Yeah.
But I definitely was feeling that, so when he came in there and says we're going to leave, and he takes Heartbane, really out of left field for me.
Wasn't there some comment about George regretting putting the line fat pink mask in the books?
Yeah.
Yeah, we heard that.
Yeah.
Not because he didn't like it, but because so many people have come up to him and said, "Oh, fat pink mask."
Okay, so other thoughts on this scene, Yoke Boy? I think you had some thoughts on the Heartsbane stuff.
Yeah, I loved Sam stealing Heartsbane. It was a great surprise to have a kind of fuck yeah moment from Sam after the humiliation at the dinner table.
Actually,
however, despite the moment of bravery, I've thought about it. It's actually a really stupid thing to do and can only work against Sam and Gilly in the longer term. Sam clearly wants the best for Gilly and the baby, but I think he's putting them all in danger by stealing Heartsbane here. It's a silly risk to take, and I'm sure there'll be some kind of repercussion. But all that said, I thought it was so funny. It was a really amusing moment.
He could barely lift it.
Yeah,
I did think it was really amusing, and I think you raised a point that I didn't really consider, that it was a risk for Gilly and the baby, and this scene was all about Sam not taking a risk, in that he wouldn't, maybe he wouldn't have stood up to his father in general, but he didn't stand up to his father right there for sure, because, as he said, he didn't know what would happen to Gilly and the baby because of that. And so this a little bit flies in the face of that, but generally I think he weighed his options and saw the value of taking Heartsbane.
He doesn't ultimately he maybe doesn't trust his father to treat Gilly and the baby well. I mean, he's not going to kill them or something like that.
Yeah.
But he doesn't. He at the moment of when it all came down, he's like, this is not a good place to leave them. Sure, their lives might be safe, but they're not. It's still too far from ideal. They're still going to be treated poorly, and it could have a lasting impact. And no, he's just not going for it. So yeah, it's really hard to say where it's going though. What are they going to do? He knows where Sam and Gilly were supposed to go, Old Town.
And
Now,
that's where they'd likely go just to ship out, period.
yeah, maybe they send the sword north to the wall somehow.
Yeah, and see, my question is, who do you trust to send as a courier for a Valyrian steel sword? My only thought, maybe they meet someone that's trustworthy enough. I thought maybe Gilly would go alone, but that's like they'd separate, and Gilly traveling alone seems really doubtful. And I thought, maybe Sam just has to go back up to the wall with Gilly. And we'll have definitely a little more to say about that. Stay tuned for the post-credits because we have a little more information on
we got
this
some
plot line.
inside info based on some extra information.
Another question that came to me was, who's going to chase after Sam, assuming someone is? I will be very disappointed if none of the Tarleys, they don't do anything about this.
Yeah, that would seem unlikely, but possible.
So comment and tell us if you think it'll be Randall, Dickon, or both coming after Sam.
They're both They're supposed to talk about how they're hunters. Their sigil is the striding huntsman. Now they're hunting Sam.
Of note is that Dickon was the one to immediately be most doubtful of the existence of White Walkers, and it would be a really great moment to have him, for him to see that they're real.
Yeah, they chase him to the wall to get the sword back, and then they get confronted with the reality of no, you shouldn't have giggled at the mention of White Walkers. They are as real as can be. And as Sean pointed out on Monday in our show-only review, he thought it would be nice and perhaps fitting for Dickon and especially Randall to see Sam in his element, to see him get the respect of his peers, and to confirm the stories that were told about him, that he really did kill a White Walker and all these things. So that would be nice for Sam.
I think that'd be satisfying for most viewers, really, and not only from Sam's point of view, but to see a skeptic confronted with this reality.
Yeah, and of course, he mentions that how the realm has been at war with wildlings for so long, and it's a point of it's dishonorable to have this enemy in his hall. So the inverse of that sort of is that you're supposed to fight the enemies of the kingdom. That's what an honorable man does. And so if the walkers are invading, Tarly and company should potentially be, lend their self to the defense of the realm, So we'll have to see. That's very exciting. Very again, this is basically just getting started. This whole new plot line. Sam and Gillies, this is only their second appearance of the season, so it seems like the second half of the season is when we're going to see movement for them now that they're done traveling.
Sam King.
Sam King.
People were chanting something King at the reading.
Okay, so let's move on.
Do you have no other thoughts, right?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Did you guys have any other thoughts on
Missed out on
Thornhill or the Tarleys?
No, that's it. I think we've covered it all.
Great. All right, the twins then. Return of the twins. Return of the Freys. So Blackfish takes River Run. Lady Gwyn, talk to us about that.
Well, this was great. The repositioning Blackfish at River Run, it gave me a lot of hope for this storyline. In the books, he never left River Run till he surrendered it to Jaime Lannister, at which point he became what we know now. He's just sort of a roving threat. Where is the Blackfish? But since the show had him escape from the Red Wedding and, go off to parts unknown, I was really afraid that they were going to abandon this entire part of A Feast for Crows, which happens to be one of my favorite parts of the books. So it's very, very gratifying to see them going here. And also, I just want to say that this scene at the Twins with Walder Frey and his sons was so hilarious.
They're laughing at us!
Yes, we are.
Yes, we were all laughing at you.
Yes, we were.
You don't lose a castle.
Yeah, it was really good, yeah.
It was just, he's such a great actor.
It's like, that's what Joffrey would be saying if he had listed to old age. He'd be like, he would give them very little in terms of, he did get, of course, he did give them Edmure at the end to give them some sort of weapon, but mostly he just said, do it. He was like, I don't care, get it done.
Just get it back.
They're laughing at us, get it done. There's no, here, I'm going to give you this, I'm going to give you that, this is how you do it, just do it, So there's a lot of other interesting little tidbits in the scene that give us even more hope for the Riverlands arc. It really looks like they just put it off a couple seasons. We thought a lot of it was skipped, but most, if not all, of the major elements are there to this point. There's a couple of major ones that we're not sure about yet, but the Mallisters and Blackwoods are in revolt, and that's just like in the books. Those were the last two houses to bend the knee. The Blackwoods were threatened by Jaime, and they were besieged by the Brackens, and then Jaime got them to surrender and give up a hostage, the hostage. And off screen, Black Walder threatened to hang Patrick Mallister to get the Mallisters to submit. Now, that worked for Black Walder because Black Walder has a reputation, and Jason Mallister probably correctly deduced that Black Walder would hang him. However, in the River Run scenes in the books, Ryman Frey doesn't have the guts to actually go through with the hanging, and Jaime is disgusted with him, hits him in the face, does all this stuff. His own son insults him for being, ineffective, and we could get something along those lines. And we hear that the Brotherhood Without Banners is raiding their supply trains and has raised the common folk against them. So, confirmed, Brotherhood Without Banners are back, and we weren't sure whether it would be the Brotherhood Without Banners or because we knew preseason they were casting news about outlaws, but they were all these new outlaws. We weren't sure if Beric or Thoros would be back, and it does seem that Thoros has been confirmed to return, I believe. I guess that's a bit of a spoiler. Sorry about that, but that's not even certain, so don't quote me on that. But it opens up all these possibilities, such as even including the return of Stoneheart, which is still possible. I know we're trying not to get I know you don't have your expectations set at all for that.
No, I'm trying. Every time you say it, I have to re-lower my expectations. I'll have something to say about this in the post-credits discussion as well. That even Aziz, Lady Gwyn, and Yolkboy haven't heard yet.
Ooh, very nice, very nice.
Ooh, excellent. Well, I wouldn't be surprised to see some sort of a Merritt Frey-like scene.
Yeah,
we're near about the end of the season. Personally, I also don't hold out much hope for Lady Stoneheart.
But the Brotherhood could function just without her, right? That's what
absolutely. Yeah. Now, what about other possibilities? Let's talk about some of the other things that happen in the Riverlands in the books that we could expect to see. The elder brother Septon Maribald situation. Maybe we'll get the Hound. Maybe we'll get
Brienne and Jaime.
That's the big one, yeah.
Soon to be reunited, and possibly alongside Podrick and Bronn. I've got to express some disappointment at Jaime's kind of lack of redemption arc that was so defining in the books that everybody that I've spoken to about it, unanimously loves. But this kind of redemption story was a lot about Brienne. So, if they're going to kind of get back together and be on screen together, there is hope that there's some kind of redemption story for Jaime around the corner. And let's really hope, because it would be brilliant.
Yeah, it could just be a delay of this arc instead of them getting rid of it.
Yeah, well, the Riverlands is where Jaime gets that letter from Cersei saying that she needs him. Of course, in the books, it's prior to her walk of shame. That is where he finally rejects her, goes off with his own motivations. So it's really my fervent hope that this is where we might be going. Because I agree with Yolkboy, it's probably my single biggest disappointment with the show is the lack of, this coherent redemption arc for Jaime.
So it's definitely set up a lot of expectations for us. We have maybe, as a group, as a whole, we have low expectations for the possibility of Stoneheart, but I think we all acknowledge that it is definitely possible. And with this Jaime redemption arc as well, no confirmation whatsoever that it will happen, but this is the opportunity. This is when it could happen. If it was ever going to happen, this is the right spot for it. So there's a lot of hope in this arc, and this is very exciting that we're getting here. And the fact that it's happening at the end of the season when the exciting things are supposed to happen, when the big changes and momentous things are happening. So it all just really, there's just a lot of super amount of potential here. We're really, really excited about it. The thing about Jaime's redemption arc as well is it involves finding out some dark, bitter truths about Cersei, such as what happened with Lancel and some other things. And the Lancel one is particularly big in terms of this discussion because Jaime doesn't know about Lancel. But who does? Podrick?
Maybe Bronn.
And maybe Bronn. So it could come up. when they all become, on screen together, and this is how he could learn. It could be something else that happened. Maybe Jaime gets news of something else that's happened at King's Landing while he's gone. Maybe Cersei sends a letter trying to get him back, and it's very similar to the books. And she describes what's happened, but he's become disillusioned by then. Or maybe Brienne has, got him back thinking honorably, something like that.
I love the thought of Jaime learning about this, just because I personally think Lancel looks like a real creep in the show. Back when he had that terrible minstrel wig and cap to now when he has the star and the buzz cut, he's always looking solemn.
And that creepy look he gave when High Sparrow was like, "We're ready for violence." I mean, Lancel gives the side eye to Jaime, and it was like, "Whoa, that guy's
crazy that guy really
looks creepy as hell." Yeah. Now, here's where the predictions get maybe a little darker. Well, for me anyway. I think some of my compatriots here have a less dark view of this possibility. But I have for a long time expected that there's a strong possibility Brienne would lay down her life for Jaime. The circumstances would be, we all know Brienne was captured by Stoneheart at the end of Feast, but we know that she's free in Dance because she meets Jaime and gets him to leave his army to go off. Ostensibly, she tells him that the Hound has captured Sansa, or is it Arya? Sansa, I think, and is going to kill her unless, Jaime comes. And so Jaime leaves, and we hear that he's been gone for a while through Kevin's point of view. And he's obviously falling into a trap with the Brotherhood. They're going to capture him, and how does he get out of that? Maybe a trial by combat seems like a throwback to Beric versus the Hound. And while Jaime is in no shape to win a trial by combat, even against, he's still, as we see in the Riverland scenes, he's training with ill and pain all throughout those scenes, and he's still really not good. He's better. He's getting better, but he's still bad. And so it would make sense for Brienne to step in for him because she, more than anyone, knows that he really has changed. Other people it's just his reputation. That's all that matters. Even Cersei doesn't really get it. And she spends a lot of time with him. But only Brienne knows this. And so she would be possibly willing to step in, and maybe she loses, or maybe she is wounded badly, or something along those lines. But Yokeboy, you have a different idea.
Yeah, no, I hear what you say. And our instinct, and I say instinct because, we're all guessing here, aren't we?
Yeah.
Is that Brienne has more to do in the story, and we really hope that she's going to find a way out of her current predicament. There is always a chance that she stands in for Jaime in a trial by combat, as you mentioned, but there's also the chance that she wins. She's a good fighter.
She could beat, I think, anyone the Brotherhood has. So yeah, I could see that for sure, and I definitely hope you're right. My idea has some merits to it, but I don't want it to be true. so that's that.
Both are possible, I would say. We're just guessing, aren't we? There's not much evidence here. We're just going on instinct. So
yeah. Well, we will continue the Twins Riverlands discussion at the end of the episode in the credits, after the credits, because there are several shots of what's coming in the trailers. Quite a few scenes from what's coming up in the Riverlands in the trailers, so we'll discuss those separately. So we do have a lot more to say on that, but for now, we'll move on. First of all, a shout out to our Ironborn captains. It's a new pledge level on our Patreon site, and you can get your own captain title as well as a ship. And our first Ironborn captain is Kathleen the Ruthless, captain of the Night Terror. Well-timed shout out there for those in the know. So let's keep that going. Let's keep moving in this episode and talk about King's Landing. This was a scene that there were several things going on that I missed because I was too focused on what I was really looking for, and that caused me to miss a few details. Seeing it the second, third, and fourth times opened me up to some new things. There's several minor scenes building up to the big scene and some after scenes as well. We get a couple of different places here within King's Landing. First, we get Tommen and the High Sparrow. Tommen is the lion, but it's the High Sparrow sinking his claws into the young king here. He's the one in charge, it seems like. And this is the battle. It's the Game of Thrones played out in a different way. Instead of people fighting for the throne, they're fighting for the ruler, because the ruler is, well, he's a very influenceable little kid. It's relatively easy to make him do what you want him to do. And that's just a dichotomy. So when there's kings and queens, there are other people who have claims to the throne. But when there's a weak king, it opens the door for all people who could never be king themselves. People like Littlefinger and Varys, people who just, it wouldn't work for them to be king. They don't have noble enough blood, but it allows them to manipulate someone like Tommen. High Sparrow is a perfect example. No chance the High Sparrow could ever be king of Westeros, king on the Iron Throne. But ruling through Tommen effectively like this, that's not only is that legitimate, but as of now, it's completely happening. So let's talk about Tommen and Marjorie, where this is where things get a little more confusing and where we might need to explain some things and set our own opinions on what we think is happening. Yoko, let's start with you.
Okay, Tommen and Marjorie. This is the kind of first hints that Marjorie might have become devout. At this stage, though, it's really not clear whether she's just playing along and has a kind of secret plan, or that the High Sparrow has genuinely wore her down and she's become religious. We've previously seen Marjorie desperate to help Loras and showing some inner fortitude that her brother didn't have. So I think we all agree that Marge is most likely trying to play the faith into releasing her and her brother, and that takes away the leverage that the faith currently have, and it kind of frees the hostages. And once they free the hostages, then the faith are vulnerable because, like I said, they've got no leverage. Their bargaining chips are gone, aren't they? So I really hope this is how Marjorie's story is going to play out, because I really think it would be terrible writing if Marjorie had actually converted, overnight, and she'd really gone against all the hints so far that she's got this inner resolve, and suddenly she's bowing down to the High Sept, and I think that would make awful writing.
I agree. Yeah, and I'm with you. I don't think that's what's happening. I do think Marjorie is a top schemer here, and she had her own plan, and she was legitimately surprised by the military intervention and probably a bit disappointed because she's like, no. I have to be seen to submit to this. My penitence is part of this. I have to admit that I did something wrong, or it kind of defeats the whole purpose. And if you just sweep me away, then they're still going to be like, nope, Marjorie never did what she needed to do. She never atoned. And the problem with Marjorie's plan, though, and it may be, I'm not saying she didn't necessarily think this through, but because she's doing the only thing she can, is that Tommen seems to have genuinely converted. That you make a great point about hostages, and if they just let everyone go, they lose some of their leverage. But if Tommen is genuinely converted to the faith, they don't necessarily need a lot of leverage because they've got the top spot on lockdown. Tommen's, going with
that could be a tragic mistake in Marjorie's plan if Tommen has really swallowed it. That could be the backfire.
Yeah, if she tries to say, hey, I was just playing along, now let's do our thing. And he's like, no, I legitimately, we saw when he came out on the steps, it was a big surprise. His Kingsguard are wearing the 7-pointed stars now. Just those 4 anyway. And that's a pretty neat detail. And it kind of shows that he's probably not playing around.
Yeah, I think that Marjorie definitely thinks, she's like, I converted him once, I can convert him again. She can't have a private conversation with him. She can't make it clear what she's doing.
She can't just pretend to go along with it. Yeah,
she can't.
She knows she's being listened to.
Yeah, she knows that. So I think she's confident in her abilities, and I do think that she could, it could get out of control for her. But I also agree with Yoko that I would be deeply disappointed if Marjorie was actually devout now, mainly for me, because she loves her brother, and she doesn't think that he's wrong for being a homosexual.
Right.
And that's what really gets it down to brass tacks. We saw that it was clear that Marjorie just didn't seem to have any issues with it at all.
She walked in on it, was just like, you probably shouldn't do this so openly. She didn't say don't do it.
Yeah,
just
don't
totally be so blatant about it.
So it would be such a switch of her values to me. And so I really don't think so. I think Natalie Dormer's a very good actress, and you could see that veneer here when she's talking to Tommen, and again, like you said, when she's reacting to the Tyrell soldiers.
I think she cuts off Tommen a few times. He's about to say something. Like she wants to steer the conversation in certain ways to make sure certain things aren't said. So yeah, I think that she is. I'm very confident that she's just playing her own angle, her own escape game here. But Well, again, we'll have a few more things to discuss at the end of the trailer. There's still plenty more to say about the scene, but there's also more to say based on the trailer scene. So we'll have more to say on Marjorie as well. But let's talk about the actual moment of confrontation a bit more. There's some cool things going on that I didn't catch the first time, did not talk about it in the show-only review. And in fact, I wondered why Olenna was even there. It seemed like a dangerous place for her to be. Like if it goes to blood, like, you know, she's a 60, 70-year-old woman in a battle. It's not a great place to be. But she was signaling Mace with her fan. Every time Mace ordered the troops to do something, it was her making motions with her fan. She was totally calling all the shots there. Mace was looking at her for directions. It was really cool, really subtle. And when I looked for it, it was blatant. But when I didn't notice it, I didn't catch even the slightest hint of it. So go back and watch that scene if you want. It's really nice, really clever. And what that says to me is that Olenna she understands how important the situation and how delicate it is. And the wrong decision at the wrong time or the wrong move could mean blood in the streets, civil war, like Kevin was worried about, like she was worried about too. So she wanted to be there to be the final decider on whether blood would be spilled or not. I think that was why. I think that was it. She's like, I'm not leaving this decision to anyone else, certainly not to Mace. So that was really cool. And
one thing I saw that was very funny was, you know, a lot of people making fun of Mace's speech there. And it was a comical speech, not only because of Mace himself, but it was the editing. It was the lack of music. It was, you know, there was a number of things. I saw edits with like heroic music in the background, and his speech was decent. Yeah. With some good music in the background. But I also saw a great one where instead of giving a speech, he sings a song. You know how he's the Mace of Bass, and he sings like with a deep voice. And I linked it to you, Aziz, I think. And
okay.
It was very funny. I love Mace and his big plumage and his what's happening, and he has a lot of humor.
The difference between Mace of Bass and Ace of Bass is that Mace did not see the sign. His mother has to tell him which signs they saw. Yeah. So let's talk about Jaime and Tommen. Now, it makes sense that Tommen would have to punish Jaime in this light in some way, because he did make an aggressive move against the faith, which is now allied with the crown, even though he didn't know it at the time. You know, you'd think that maybe that would mean some sort of punishment for Mace and Olenna as well, maybe, but we haven't seen that yet. Now, the scene, of course, has shades of Barristan Selmy, doesn't it? Lady Gwen, talk to us about this scene a bit.
Well, it does, obviously. The stripping off of the armor, you know, in front of the king, definitely was very reminiscent of Barristan. But what I want to know, and what I thought immediately as soon as I figured out what was going on, who's going to replace Jaime as the Lord Commander of the Kingsguard? I mean, we don't have any other named Kingsguard at the moment other than Gregor, and so surely they're not going to be as stupid as to name him as Lord Commander. But you think they have to have someone. I mean, it's a known position. It's very important, I believe. So we talked about it earlier. Could this be the way that we finally get to see Loras in the Kingsguard? Mm-hmm. You know, they've got to make Loras relevant again. He hasn't been relevant to the plot for a while, other than just, you know, being as a prisoner.
Make Loras great again. Is that what you're saying?
That's what we're saying. Yes.
That's great.
Loras. 2016.
I kind of wonder how irritated all the other Kingsguard would be to see Loras just appointed and made Lord Commander. They're like, hey, I put in my long hours. I did overtime.
Some of them maybe didn't. Like some of them are just recently named. They're also nameless and faceless. Yeah, no, they all died. These are all new Kingsguard. Yeah.
Well, maybe they'll be as annoyed as Jaime was, or as Barristan was when Jaime was appointed Lord Commander.
Good point. Very good point. Now, so because this happens in the show, we got to at least consider the possibility that somehow Jaime is axed from the Kingsguard in the books as well. Certainly that'll happen if the Lannisters just lose the throne. Jaime won't be Kingsguard to, you know, Aegon the Sixth.
Yeah, what happens in that case to a Kingsguard? Are they expected to just like commit, like, what is it? They like kill themselves and kill themselves on their swords?
I mean, Barristan joined the new regime, but he was like the only one.
He was invited to, like, yeah.
It's an open question. We really don't know. I mean, it's not only, it's hard to answer for several reasons. One being that the precedent has changed. I mean, Barristan's exit from the Kingsguard was unprecedented. Jaime's is, well, it's precedented since of Barristan's example, but we don't know how it works. Does Jaime is he back in the line of succession? Is he basically Lord of Casterly Rock now? I mean, that didn't even get brought up.
No, it didn't, and you got to wonder if that's something that Jaime's going to realize or have brought to his attention. Hey, I should be Lord of Casterly Rock then. I want it, or I don't want it, or is it something that Cersei or someone else will be pushing for? And of course, if he's made Lord of Casterly Rock, there's an impetus on him to get married and have kids.
Yeah, he could have kids. Yeah,
it's a whole new ball game for him.
Well, this is what Tywin wanted for him in the books, and he categorically, rejected that. Tywin wanted to remove him from the Kingsguard and send him to Casterly Rock and have him get married. He said, no, thank you. In fact, the suggestion was that he marry Marjorie. I feel like Jaime is going to leave the Kingsguard, ultimately.
Yoko, you had some thoughts on leaving the Kingsguard as well, huh?
Yeah, I just kind of occurred to me with Jaime leaves the Kingsguard, Jon leaves the Watch, Arya leaves the Faceless Men, or, this is all happening kind of in succession. We can kind of see how the characters are being maneuvered into completely different positions now. And I'm thinking this is to set up their end games, isn't it? We're on the final stretch and they've been set up into their final positions.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's right. They're in their Act 3, coming in there. Another thing that he made me think of by mentioning that was Tywin's wish is that I'm sure Kevin knew it was Tywin's wish. We see Kevin standing there at Tommen's side. I have to think that Kevin was pushing for it, and it's clear, but he's getting one of Tywin's dying wishes.
Kevin definitely holds a torch for Tywin.
Holds a torch for Tywin.
He thinks of him a lot in his own chapter and how he would have, how he would have reacted to some of these things, like Cersei's walk. He thinks about a lot. He's how Tywin would have reacted. Rather, he thinks about maybe. I personally think Tywin would have done everything he could to stop that walk, but Kevin is maybe thinking about it a little differently. Yeah.
So one thing we've noted before and see here, is two Lannister factions. With Kevin and Jaime, and Jaime, Cersei. But you see, this was what Cersei wanted. This is what Kevin wanted. You wonder, they have a conversation saying, "Look, we both want this. Let's make it happen." Yeah. I'll calm Jaime down. You get Tommen to do it because my word has little weight with him right now. Yeah. I like the idea that Kevin had something that had some influence on Tommen in this decision. Yeah. Another thing that I took a little bit of note of, and then Sean brought to my attention greater, is just as similar as the scene is to the Barristan scene, there's a lot of key differences in the audience for the scene, whereas Barristan was more public. Jaime was just in front of a Lannister guards. And Kevin, Kevin, and of course you can say, Barristan, it was happening from Joffrey. He wanted this to be a public spectacle of a thing, and Sean and I were talking a lot about the different angles and the lighting that was shown, in that, this lighting is subdued and dark, and very dark. And it makes sense from a lot of ways, but I think it was a nice touch and a well done scene. Yeah. Okay, let's take a quick ad break, and we'll come back to talk about the final King's Landing scene. Jaime talking to Cersei about their future plans. Then we'll move on to Braavos and the rest. Okay, this final scene, Jaime is very frustrated. He's basically goes on a little rant how he's going to get Bronn and go kill the High Sparrow, etc. And Cersei's like, no, this is fine. This could work out. Jaime is first of all concerned about Cersei's upcoming trial, and Cersei just kind of brushes it off and says, look, it's trial by combat. I got the mountain. And then Jaime's like, yeah, okay. Well, and deep down he's thinking, yeah, but I wanted to see that. But yeah. Now, but here's where I think, again, Cersei is being overconfident, just like she was with the military intervention at the Sept, which did not work out at all. It was very embarrassing for them. How does does the High Sparrow really not know that Cersei's going to choose the mountain as her defender? Like, isn't that blatantly obvious? So he's not just going to, I don't know if he's just going to walk into this and allow that to happen. Maybe he's got something planned. Maybe he's got a trick planned, but maybe not. Maybe he's just really devout and he expects the gods to side with the faithful. You're always theorizing the High Sparrow's got some plan going on. Well, this is just so obvious. Like, he knows the mountain's going to be her champion.
That doesn't mean he's going to do anything
You're the
about
High Sparrow's devoutest follower.
it.
Most
pro
devout.
Sparrow.
You're the most devout.
He's the highest sparrow. So that we do have some more thoughts on this. There is some things that are revealed in the trailers, so we'll touch on that at the end of the episode. But one suggestion I've seen is that the High Sparrow will insist on a trial by 7, which we wouldn't see happen. I don't think that'd be too expensive for them to film, probably.
Yeah.
So I would think that Cersei just, she's caught. She doesn't have the ability to find the right champions or something, which maybe that's a bit of a stretch. And it devolves from there. And who knows? But like I said, more on that in the trailer discussion after the credits. Definitely several things to say on that. But let's move on to Bravos. Let's talk about the play and backstage. Yoke Boy, take us away.
Yeah, I really, really love the play within the play. I think it's really well done and definitely gives this sense of a kind of bastardized version of the story that we've, all been watching. So I think it works well in the books, and I think it's working really well on screen, actually. I almost wish there was a bonus episode where we could kind of watch this whole play, see this whole play about Tyrion.
That'd be great.
Like the Mercy chapter, the play does seem to revolve around the supposed bad deeds of Tyrion Lannister. Remember that the play in the books is actually called The Bloody Hand, so again, it's revolving around Tyrion. It's quite amusing to see him blamed for everything, whether he's done it or not. I found that quite funny. The demon monkey is not always popular with the small folk, but he does make a kind of good figure of fun. And yeah, I really enjoyed this whole sequence.
And we're going to relate this demon monkey aspect and how this play reflects on Tyrion and how that applies to Daenerys' arc a bit later. So that's a little thought to keep in the back of your minds, and it's pretty cool. But Lady Gwyn, you have more thoughts on the play itself.
Yeah, just a little comment from news from Balticon. Somebody in the audience asked George about Shakespeare's influence on A Song of Ice and Fire. And aside from the obvious, which is the histories, which he went on at some length about and probably could have gone on even longer, he just mentioned that in sort of a general sense, this play from the Mercy chapter is his nod to Elizabethan theater, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah, he brought up the comparison from Tyrion to Richard III.
Mm-hmm. How it was
many
misportrayed.
people have brought up before, the similarities. And so it was great to hear him talk about that.
Yeah, he talked about how Shakespeare ruined Richard III's reputation because it was he meant to he was writing a drama and he wanted made Richard III more of a villain, but historically it's not terribly accurate, and this is what we're seeing. Tyrion's being blamed for all these things that are certainly not his fault or his doing at all. So another nice little thing in this scene is Arya, when she's pouring the poison into the rum, she's looking into a mirror. And it's like sort of challenging her, asking her who she really is. And this is a throwback, hat tip to Lady Alicia the Everlasting, one of our lords and ladies on Patreon who noticed this, that Sansa in season 2 has a similar scene where she's looking into a mirror, and it's they're under the auspices of identity issues. And so that's really nice. And Alicia also pointed out a couple of the other parallels that we've mentioned that are throwbacks to season 2. She says season 2 is full of nods that are resolved in season 6, which is pretty cool because a lot of times a lot of show watchers and especially book readers point out that the show just like abandons things and doesn't make these connections that the book makes, like these really thin dot connections across multiple books. And as the show gets bigger, as more seasons pass, we are seeing more of that. So it might be time at least to reconsider that the show does more of this than we had previously given credit for, or at least they're making up for it by doing a lot of it this year. So I really appreciate that because those are the kind of things we love to find. We're such nerds about finding connections in the books, and that's part of what geeking out of this material is all about. So when the show does it too, well, hey, we just got to give them credit for that. It's really good. So Lady Crane and Arya talking to each other. Yeah,
we have this great line about, when the writing's bad, how they work with what they have. Which you gotta when they wrote that. Did it really go over their heads how fans would interpret that?
The whole room laughed so
Yeah.
loud. Because like I said, we were in a room of like 300 to 400 people. That line, people were just like, everyone got it and just laughed. Like, oh, you realize what you just said.
It's too good. And then we have, of course, her saying that Arya had, expressive eyes and wonderful eyebrows, which Aziz connected to it from an actual scene. I connected it to a story, an interview with Maisie Williams, where they have those Funko Pop toys, the little like bobblehead looking toys.
So they're pretty popular.
And they're very popular. And there's ones for all the characters. Well, Cersei's has eyebrows. Arya's doesn't have eyebrows. And Maisie Williams had her Funko Pop, and she's like, why doesn't it have eyebrows? I have nice eyebrows too. And so I like to think that, they're like, yes, you have wonderful eyebrows. Maybe are bad.
And there's another throwback to season 2 when Melisandre meets Arya, and Melisandre really focuses on her eyes. And what she sees in them is that Arya, will shut many pairs of eyes herself.
I think that's season 3, just to nitpick.
Oh, okay.
Even 4, 3 or 4, one of those two, but not 2.
It's the scene where the Gendry is sold to the brother or sold to Melisandre.
Yeah, I think that has to be.
So
4, is it 3 or 4? Anyway, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's hard.
It's late season 3 or early. I think it's probably early season 4.
Maybe it's not season 2. I guess
it couldn't have been season 2.
I think it might be. I really think it could be season 2 because
it's not, man. I swear.
Sure.
On
Okay.
life, yeah.
Okay. Cool. All right. Well, if you're swearing on your life, that's
cool.
It just I didn't remember. It was Arya was still with the brother without banners in season 3 because that starts in season 2. Okay.
Yeah.
If it is, it is. That's cool. I'm sure someone will
comment
quickly. if you somehow are wrong, then you'll have to take your own life. So.
Impale yourself with a sword.
But we'll let that
have my face.
I'll hang it on my wall over there.
So there's also the insight that Arya has over Cersei's character and how she would actually react to Joffrey's death. I thought that was really cool. Lady Gwen, you had some thoughts on that.
I think this was cool. It highlighted the similarities between Arya and Cersei, didn't it? And these two both have this really strong theme of vengeance. And just, looking at Arya's face during all the Cersei scenes, and then as she kind of delivers this whole exchange with Lady Crane was, I thought it was very thought-provoking.
Yeah, right on. Theme of vengeance is present. That's really good. Yeah, it's so exciting to see Arya, moving out of her training arc, and she's still in Braavos, and we need for her to leave Braavos before she really gets rolled back into the main plot and starts interacting with other major characters again. So we're all very excited to see that happening. But at least it seems very imminent now. The means for getting to Westeros is still kind of up in the air, but
we talked for a while about her being sent to play Cersei being parallel to her being sent to kill or wanting to kill
real Cersei.
And here she doesn't kill real Cersei, and we don't think she's going to kill. I mean, she doesn't play Cersei, and I don't think we think she's going to kill real Cersei. It's the Valonqar, and so that continues the parallel.
Yeah.
Not that I think she'll stop for any sympathy necessarily, although that would be quite interesting if she felt bad for her and couldn't do it, a la the Hound.
Now, as I said at the beginning of this episode, there was massive cheering for the moment that Arya becomes Arya again. She reclaims Needle, and it seems that she's reclaiming her identity at the same time. Yoke Boy, tell us about that.
Yeah, Arya picking up Needle is hugely significant. I think everyone will agree with me there. The sword was given to her by Jon, but it really symbolizes her true self as a Stark. And I've got a really great quote from Feast, if you'll allow me to read it out. Needle was Robb and Bran and Rickon, her mother and her father, even Sansa. Needle was Winterfell's grey walls and the laughter of its people. Needle was the summer snows, old Nan's stories, the heart tree with its red leaves and scary face, the warm earthy smell of the glass gardens, the sound of the north wind rattling the shutters of her room. Needle was Jon Snow's smile. He used to mess my hair and call me little sister, she remembered, and suddenly there were tears in her eyes. So Arya, after hearing that quote, I'm sure you'll agree, Arya regaining Needle, an item the Faceless Men didn't want her to have, is a really great way to convey that she is now her old self again, coupled with her refusal to carry out a task she didn't want to do and could find no justification for. Arya with Needle is Arya Stark, and no one was just another temporary moniker for her to add to quite a long list of, in the books, maybe 16 or 17 names she has in the books. Mm-hmm. And perhaps the first person to get a taste of Needle, now Arya has it, is going to be the waif. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the waif could get it. I think maybe it won't be Arya that gets the waif. Maybe Arya just escapes. And just a side note, I didn't actually realize it was as high as 16 or 17 names Arya had.
It's quite a few.
I never had counted them before, and that's interesting.
We'll have to maybe we'll get an exact count later. And let you guys know. Yeah, I like the question of. I do think the waif isn't. If anyone's going to be her first target, that's as good a guess as any. But we've seen in their fighting that the waif is just far above Arya at this point in her skill. And there's some very interesting things about the scene where the waif talks to Jaqen about what happened. And this could require further research, and maybe some of you out there have already noticed this. But when the dialogue here is very important, and I'm not sure that it's appropriate to be this precise with it, but as book readers, that's what we do, and I think there's a good chance that it matters, and if not, it's very interesting. So what it is when she comes in, Jaqen says, "And how did it go?" or something like that, and she says, "As I thought." And the first, she says, refer to herself as I, which kind of sticks out a bit because they're not supposed to do that. They're supposed to be no one. And then she says, it's a shame. A girl had such promise, or had many talents, or many gifts, or something like that. Yeah. And then the waif says, "You promised me." And Jaqen pauses, and he has a funny look on his face before looking up at her. And this, it seems like, it's like he's surprised or he's confronted by this reality. No, Jaqen already knows this. The second she says Arya failed to do her murder the proper way, or at all, that's Arya's death sentence, or supposed to be. She already was warned, you will not get a third chance. So why is Jaqen surprised here? And hat tip to our friend Dan Koisman for being the first one to point this out to me. She says, "You promised me." And that's what Jaqen reacts to. He's like, "You promised me." So maybe when he says, "It's a shame, a girl had many gifts," he's talking about the waif, because by that time she's already said I. No one is not supposed to be vindictive. She's clearly has it in for Arya. Neither of them are fit to be faceless men, Arya nor the waif. So I think the waif's face is a good chance it's the one going up on that wall, because Jaqen says one way or another, some face is going up there. And so maybe Jaqen will stop the waif from killing Arya. I don't know why he would let her go. I don't know why Jaqen would let Arya go, because she's already, she's broken the rules, etc. So maybe Arya just gets away from them both somehow and has faceless men on her tail forever, which is not going to be good. But there's a lot to consider here, and there's some good subtlety there. Anyone have any more thoughts on that, or am I off the deep end with these ideas? Am I taking the dialogue literally?
I think that it's really interesting to think about whether it's, I feel like the show often just goes for the most simplest explanation, and a lot of these kind of theories, including kind of conspiracies, never come to fruition. But I think that it's an idea that's, engaging to think about and consider. So thanks to you, and is it Dan Koifman who pointed that out? Thanks.
Right on. So do we have any more thoughts on Arya and what's coming up for her? She certainly ends her scene with turning out the light there, and I've seen some suggestions that that's because she knows how to blind fight, and maybe that will give her an advantage over the waif. But I kind of think the waif probably went through the similar training.
Yeah, I kind of think that too. I think it's interesting that right now we're going to have assuming that Randall and Dickon, I should say Tarley's, go after Sam. We'll have two characters being chased down.
That's a good point. Yeah. In addition to Bran being chased.
You're right. In addition to Bran, hopefully he's almost done he's done being chased, right?
Yeah. That's
you're right.
True.
There's a lot of people being chased around Westeros.
Chase scenes, Westerosi chase scenes.
Technically, they're not. Ashiara and Theon are also having to be aware that Euron might be chasing after them. They don't know. We know that he's making ships. But they don't know.
Good point. Okay, so I guess we can move on to ye old Dothraki Sea, where Daenerys is leading her massive Khalasar of all the Khalasars, basically. She asks Dario how many ships they'll need, and Dario suggests 1,000 at least, which happens to match up with Euron's building plans. So that's kind of an obvious connection to make, and it makes sense since the Ironborn fleet has long been seen as a very likely vehicle for Daenerys to get to Westeros. And I mean long. I mean, before Feast for Crows even, people were thinking that. And then once the Feast for Crows came out, it seemed even more likely, because Euron announced he was going there, etc., or sending Victorian, as it turned out. But there's, like I said earlier in the episode, there's actually a lot of subtlety in the scene, even though it's just this rah-rah, Dothraki, are you with me kind of stuff. It's a lot like Khal Drogo's speech. We get the triumphant dragon music. But the thing is, Dario's question is really interesting. He asks, other than the Unsullied, her army is just composed of a bunch of things that no one in Westeros likes. In fact, that they hate in some cases. Westeros doesn't like eunuchs. She's got an army of eunuchs and and some eunuch counselors. She's got Dothraki, who Westerosi do not like. They think of them as savages, dirt worshipping savages or something like that. And of course, they're called the culture clash. They don't even speak common. I mean, they can't even communicate with each other very well. There's all sorts of issues there. And then there's potentially Relorists coming over. They're not going to be popular in Westeros, I don't think. And this, by the way, I want to give a little hat tip to watching Michael Naraki, who points out this whole dichotomy of her being a conqueror. And it's kind of, as soon as that question comes up, as whether or not she's a conqueror or a ruler or maybe both, that's right when Drogon reappears. And it's like, well, Drogon is an instrument of conquest. He's not an instrument of rule. He's destruction. Such in the books, Dario is war and woe. He's, Dany starts to think about these sort of things and how some of these things are violent influence of destruction that are not part of a ruler's arsenal. They're part of a conqueror's arsenal. And so this dichotomy is really interesting. And this is what I meant about Tyrion. The play shows that Tyrion is wildly, wildly unpopular, even among people who don't know him, and all these stories are being told about him. And here he is, another part of Dany's council and army. So it's like, this cannot go over smoothly.
And one thing I couldn't help but think of here is, we see a lot of cultures intermingling in the books, and through marriages and large scale migration from the Rhoynar to Dorne to the Wildlings, marrying into the Northmen with Alice Karstark and Thenns. And so now we have these Dothraki and R'hllor priests and maybe Myronese coming with her, or all these people, and they're gonna marry into Westerosi.
Yeah, that's kind of cool. Yeah, second Nymeria, that's a good point. Yeah, because they married all those ancient bloodlines into each other.
Yeah, so you think Dothraki will get married into these families? I can only assume that there'll be some marriages like that.
It's true. Well, Lady Gwen, you had some thoughts on this. Dany's promising destruction, basically, right? And that's what she's offering her Khal.
Yeah. She's offering it. She's demanding it. And first, as it pertains to her dragons, which you mentioned, I just briefly say that we heard George say at Balticon, or make the comparison of the dragons to nuclear weapons. Which wasn't anything new. He said that before, but that was fresh in my mind, kind of thinking about this. But Dany, in that speech, which really echoes Drogo's speech, she's demanding that they tear down. They cross the Black Sea, they kill the men in their iron suits, they tear down the stone houses. Wondered if this could be a hint at what Oakboy mentioned earlier, with possible destruction of King's Landing. Tied maybe to wildfire dragons, or whether it's intentional or accidental. Could just be a little tip at that. There's certainly stone houses are going to get torn down if she unleashes her dragons.
Yeah, so that's really, it's people have been long expecting. It's finally coming. At least it's still a little ways away, but Dany's return to Westeros from childhood is, looming now. But it looks anything but like a smooth transition. It looks like it will have all kinds of problems. Now, at least she has a lot of manpower.
One quick thing that we didn't write in our notes, but I wanted to mention is I think we all had fun laughing and talking about what happened to Daenerys' horse. She rides over there and then she comes back on a dragon. And
did it turn into a dragon? Is that what happened?
That's it. Drogon is a real skin changer, a shapeshifter. He's a faceless dragon.
Well, yeah, we all joked about how Daenerys gave Drogon a little snack. To make him a little more amiable to her riding him. And, Daenerys isn't emotionally attached to her horse because she already had one horse die in the Dothraki in the Red Waste.
Yeah, and the silver is still alive in the books.
Yeah.
Barristan is riding it in the spoiler chapters. Spoiler. Minor spoiler there. He wanted some symbol of her to be there still. It's pretty cool. I like that.
So I think we're done with all that.
Yeah,
and we can move on to a couple questions.
Sure, let's do a couple questions.
So
let's mention real quick.
Oh.
I want to before the questions. I want to mention what wasn't in this episode. No Ramsay or Rickon still, so Rickon's fate is still delayed for now. We haven't heard some of the things we talked about are coming. Some lines not clear that. 2 episodes in a row without Ramsay though. It's interesting. No Meereen. So maybe we'll be getting back to it next episode. We'll have to see. No Wall, Sansa, Jon, Davos, Mel, or Iron Islands, or Asha Yara / Theon, who were part of the Iron Islands, but they've left, so they're not there anymore. But we see neither them nor the Iron Islands itself. So there's a lot that wasn't in this episode. Makes sense, though, because there were several things that weren't in any other part of the season. Sam and Gilly took up a lot of time, whereas they took up no time the entire first 5 episodes. In the Riverlands, no time at all prior to this episode. Now we're getting some talk on that, some scenes there. So things are changing, things are moving. And that's
all right. So Aziz, what's your favorite scene / plot line?
Well, my favorite scene, it's tough. I think I really liked the visions, even though they were kind of confusing and disconnected, just because the Mad Kings burn them all was it just hit me so hard. It was so cool. So maybe that's not my favorite scene. It's my favorite moment. Because the Benjen we kind of saw coming.
His fighting was.
The reveal of Tommen being tied to the faith was pretty surprising, but it didn't hit me as hard as burn them all. That was just great. So I'm gonna go with that.
All right. Let's see. What about you, Yoke Boy?
My favorite was the Bran stuff. The Benjen thing was just such a hell yeah kind of moment, and like Aziz, I really like the visions too. How about you, Lady Gwyn?
I would have to say Sam stealing Heartsbane. I didn't see that one coming, and I
like that one a lot too.
It was a really.
He did it. He did it so kind of nonchalantly. Oh, I'm just stealing the sword.
It was so Sam the whole way.
He had trouble lifting
it. There's more ceremony for kids stealing parents' booze than him stealing the family sword.
He should have replaced it with like a practice stick or something.
That would have
a wildling sword.
That would have killed me.
Nice, a little
if
spear.
You put something up there or anything, that would be really good. I'll answer that, but I want to say I definitely like the thought of like how I don't know when Randall looks to see if the sword's there. I like the thought Aziz mentioned that every night at dinner he says, "This is the family."
See that sword? Yeah. Every night he says that. Like, geez, again.
And then he's like, "Oh, that sword's gone." Like, so then, which I think if Randall doesn't notice it right away, it would also explain how Sam and Gilly can manage to get enough of a head start to get to Old Town and leave.
Yeah.
Which I think I just has to happen. I have to justify it somehow. But my favorite plotline was just the Sam one entirely. My favorite scene, as I mentioned, was specifically the introduction when they arrive at Horn Hill.
Cool.
Although the dinner was particularly good, if quite painful.
I think probably a lot of people were sat home relating to having a father like that. People thinking,
yeah, right. All right, so let's see what our rating for the episode would be. I'll go in the same order, Aziz.
Okay. I'm gonna give this one a 7.5. I think it's the lowest rating I've given this season, but that's still very high. And I guess, but I'm tempted to give it an 8 because I'm just so happy to see the Riverlands. It gives me a lot of excitement for the possibilities there. So yeah, maybe I'll do the 7.75. I think Lady Gwyn broke us into 0.75s as a legal choice, so I'm going to go there. I'll go 7.75.
All right, how about you, Yo Boy?
I'll give it an 8. It was one of the best episodes of the season, I thought. In terms of it was good all the way through. That's what I thought of it. It was consistent, so yeah.
Lady Gwyn?
I was thinking 8 as well. Pretty much the same reasons. It was very enjoyable.
I'll go with an 8.5. I really liked it all around. I was super happy. Sam's one of my all-time favorite characters, and I was happy to see him come into his own. He's one of the characters whose plotlines they haven't really screwed up, I don't think. So I was very happy. Maybe some of that was that viewing party energy getting me hyped.
Yeah, I gave it a boost. I actually knocked it a little bit off for that because I knew that was artificially boosting my opinion. Maybe I shouldn't have, but maybe I should just let it go and be an 8 like you.
But yeah,
no,
I also have. I was
stated.
so surprised to see Aries and so pleased to see him. So that's another thing that's affecting my opinion
really
there.
Cool, yeah.
So yeah, generally high score for me. Maybe my favorite episode of the season, to be honest. As much as I really didn't like the Benjen and Cold Hand stuff, which leads into my next question: is what was your least favorite scene or plot line? I'll start with me. I originally would have said the Marjorie stuff because I'm just so worried. I was just so worried. I don't trust them to not make that mistake of having her be devout. But generally, everyone thinking that she is lying has convinced me. I'm hopeful. That's not my least favorite anymore. I really liked the Olenna stuff. And, I just really didn't like Cold Hands' fight very much. I don't know. I just wasn't a big fan of the fight.
Yeah.
But it was such a solid episode that's like just me picking the lowest.
You had to pick something.
Yeah,
you asked the question.
And so, how about you, Lady Gwyn? Let's start with you.
I'm torn because I didn't really care for some of the, what you said, the Marjorie kind of that stuff, but it just, except for the dragon, I really didn't like the Dany scene that much. So.
That was pretty epic.
Well, I mean, and don't like. I mean, just gave the episode an 8, so we're talking least favorite. So least favorite. Some enjoyment.
I hate it. Right. Yoko?
Yeah, probably the Dany thing because it felt like it was a really good episode, and they had to tack on this kind of fuck yeah Dany moment. You know what I mean? It just seemed like it's too contrived to kind of end the episode on this kind of uplifting thing, but they didn't need to do that, I don't think, because it was so good consistently.
Maybe because it was such a short scene, and it just seemed like it was only there just to bring the dragon in.
Yeah,
there's not a lot of plot movement.
But it is still. I thought Drogon looked really cool actually, so I didn't completely
really
dislike it.
Yeah, it was one of the best Drogon shots we've ever had. Yeah,
I've complained numerous times about some of the CGI for the dragons, and I really liked it, and I think they learned something there. For most of the Daenerys shots on Drogon, they kept it to faraway shots, which conceals any poor CGI, which was the problem with the never-ending story scene. When she leaves Daznak's pit. So I was really very happy with that in particular. So I think that kind of drowned out any other dissatisfaction I had because I was really expecting any scenes with her on a dragon to make me facepalm. Yeah. And another thing I liked about that scene actually was that for a long time I wondered why Daario was along for the trip with Jorah. And just to make witty banter with Jorah.
I remember for a while I thought he was going to die.
Yeah, you thought he was going to die. And right here I see it come to a little bit of fruition in that we get to see someone's reaction who actually knows Daenerys and is seeing her in this powerful position on her dragon. And I was personally focusing a lot on Dario's face when he saw her up there. And it made me feel better about the previous scenes with him.
He was very thoughtful. He wasn't just like rah-rah. He was really... And I think it goes with his question about, you're a conqueror. What comes after you take the Seven Kingdoms? You're a conqueror. So that, in fact, that was my least favorite scene at first. But upon rewatching it, thinking about that Daario question, how much it made me bump that scene up a bit in my mind because of the underlying stuff. So, which is always cool. And I also thought it was nice. One thing I forgot to say was that when they're waiting, when Danny goes around the corner and they're just sitting there waiting and they're waiting, the Dothraki start to get a little restless, which I think is another nice little underlying theme. It's like, well, yeah, they're going to have to have something to do. And what they do is kill and rape and enslave. What are you going to have them do once you take the Seven Kingdoms? So I thought, that gave some extra points to that scene for me. So, but it was possibly my least favorite, even despite that.
Did we get to you? I started with me.
Well, yeah, I still think it might
answer.
still be it because I can't think of what else. But I think it's that and the Benjen's Cold Hand. Same complaints I have as you. Is it was just the action was a little like flaming ball and chain, sickle. He's got all his weapons back and forth. It was fine. Like I liked it. It was just maybe like I have to pick a weakest scene. I'm thinking maybe, but the reveal was so cool. But we also knew it was coming. So.
Although, yeah, like you said, I mean, they tricked us right at that moment. It was
nice that they threw the trick in there.
I was looking deeply into his eyes and hearing his voice, and I looked over to him, and they were both like, "That's not Benjen."
Yeah.
And for like a couple scenes until we learned it was, I was like, "Who could it be? What? It's just some ranger we don't know.
Yeah.
We only know a couple people at the wall." I was really confused and thrown for a loop for a second.
I mentioned it on the show only review, and a lot of people agreed with me. So I was already very confident, but it's nice to have agreement. Some people disagreed, but that's the way that maybe we'll find out in the DVD extras one day. They'll tell us that they did something. But let's take one more quick ad break. We'll come back with our credits, and then we'll talk about spoilery stuff from the trailers and some other tidbits that we picked up along the way, and then a little more stuff from Balticon, a few more spoilers that we learned, interesting trivia bits, and things that are important for A Song of Ice and Fire. So, be right back. Okay. Thank you to First Lord Cash Craig, Hand of the King, Lord of Mines, and Lord of Makers. Lord Jim the Fortuitous of Wars and Politics of Ice and Fire blog as well, and Warden of the West. All of us got to meet him this weekend.
Yes, we
Lord
did.
George Stormsville the Cunning, Lord of the Chiliad and Warden of the East. Lord John Reed of Castle Woodbridge is the Lord Borealis, the Light of the North, and Warden of the North. Lady Kelly McMath of Covington is Lady of the Villa Hills and Crescent Springs, Warden of the South. Roy the Rogue, Archer Extraordinaire, and King Beyond them All would love to duel Angai the Archer in an archery contest. My money's on Rory, as good as Angai is. The small council of History of Westeros is made up of Lord James Inkblade, the Scholar Knight and Master of Whisperers. Grand Maester Saria of the Barrows is our Cinder of the Citadel. Lord Robert Jacobs is Master of Coin. Rosie the Clever is Master of Laws. Lord James Tuttle is Master of Ships. Ships becoming more important in the realm these days. Lord and ladies in their castles include Lady Direlies of Castle Naki, the Alpha Patron. Lord Dan of the Red Mountains and Castle Great Bell is Breaker of the Second Stone. Lord Skip of the Veldt is Lord of Castle Ganges. Cabethian Frozen is Lord of the Bricks and Castle Crimson Light. Mary Meg is Lady of the Bloody Stepstones. Gregor the Toasty is Lord of the Bread Fort, a delicious castle. Alicia the Everlasting of the Green Blood is Lady of Desert Rose, and she supplied us with some good tidbits this episode. Thanks, Lady Alicia Everlasting. Jeffrey the Unflinching is Lord of Sand Lake. Lord Greybay of the Queen City. Lord Ryan of Castle Stonegate is Guardian of the Rocky Mountain Pass. Lord Garin de Haviland is of Devil's Hand Keep. Lord Brandon Slate is the North's Hammer, Harbinger of the Old Gods. Lady Bram is Light of Winter's Garden and Beacon of the Northwest. Lord Mark Joseph is the Snow in Winterfell. Ashlyn Winter is the Hawk's Eye and Lady of Castle Skyfall. Lady Mikkel of Moonacre is leader of the Werewood Protectorate Alliance. Lady Cochon Volant is of Swine Harbor. Lord Baron of Hillcrest, Lord of the Halls, and wielder of the Valyrian Steel Machete Everglades rounds out our list of lordly lords. But there's also King's Justice Sir Troy the Steady, wielder of the Valyrian Steel Blade Fate. Lord Commander Dubbington commands the History of Westeros Kingsguard. His nickname is the Red Bear. By the way, we have an opening in our Kingsguard. That's a rare thing. So check out our Patreon page if you're interested. That's true. Both show and our Patreon have a spot for a Kingsguard. And last but certainly not least, our History of Westeros Night's Watch is commanded by Lord Commander George the Golden and First Ranger Fabian Flowers, the Bastard of Greenshield. So,
Good stuff.
Trailers, credit discussion. We've got stuff going on here.
Oh, yeah, so this obviously has spoilers for, as we're going to get into the Winds of Winter stuff and other things that are said at Balticon and other things throughout this. First, I want to start off with the thing that you guys didn't have a chance to tell you before.
Okay, spill it.
Someone asked George, apparently, at that $1,000 dinner at Balticon Thursday night. They asked him if we'd see Stoneheart in the show, and he said no, she was cut. And you can argue that he wasn't updated on her being in the show, but I got to think they'd tell him. And I think he said something about how if he was in charge, she would have been in the show. And of course, that's like a game of telephone. We didn't hear that straight from the source, but I just saw a post about it right before we recorded, and so I'm especially doubtful.
Okay, well, let's not get our hopes up for Stoneheart then. But
anyone that had the hopes up is crazy anyway.
Yeah.
Crazy hopeful.
The logistics of bringing back an actor's gone for so long.
It's
a lot of things.
Yeah, there's a lot of issues with it. Yeah, as much as it breaks my heart, because I also wanted to see Stoneheart very much. That's my biggest disappointment in the show. It's not Dorne, it's not Ariane Martell or anything like that, because at this point, I just don't think I think they would have butchered it no matter what. But Lady Stoneheart, which would have been awesome.
Yeah, that would have been cool. It would have looked really cool on screen.
But now, into the actual
trailer stuff. Yeah, so episode 7 is going to have, we see a shot of Olenna just giving Cersei the business, saying that she's ruined their houses, which is interesting. It's hard to just say Cersei is being blamed for everything that's just gone wrong. Olenna went along with the plan. She didn't handle it well either. So maybe something else has happened in between to make her say that. And my guess is, and I think you guys agree with the possibility of this guess, Loras joining the Kingsguard as Lord Commander, which would, in show canon, is far more devastating to the Tyrells because there's no other Tyrell heir. There's only Loras. There's no Garland. There's no Willis. So remember, Tywin threatened to name Loras to the Kingsguard, and that's what got Olenna to kind of come back around to things as they were kind of arguing. It may have been Cersei. She said that too, but I think it was Tywin. In any case, that may have been foreshadowing. Now, there's an interesting little thing that Jonathan Pryce said, right?
Yeah, there is. I think Yokeboy or Lady Gwyn probably know the quote better than I do, to be honest. I haven't read it preparing for this episode.
It was in Polish, and this is a Pryce thing. It was in Polish, and I think I saw it on Reddit or something, but it didn't seem like that trustworthy because the translations people were arguing about the translation and stuff. So I can't give you a great quote or anything, but he did seem to suggest that before the trial there is something that happens that changes the course of things. From what I gather, it seemed unreliable, whatever, but I'm just telling you this.
Okay.
In a kind of rumor way.
Well, that one possibility is certainly Loras joining the Kingsguard. That would cause some problems. But another possibility, or both, could happen. There's a scene that they show in the trailer where Olenna is like coming around a corner in the castle, and she looks a little concerned, and she's alone. And it has kind of an action scene feel to it. And of course, Olenna's not coming out ahead of any action scenes. So I wonder if we're going to see Olenna die. I'm officially making her my worry of the week. And
I'm down with that theory. I don't think she's going to die.
I disagree.
I will fight him.
No one wants Olenna to die. I do not want it to be true, but I do. That's where the evidence is leading my brain.
Slight segue for me. I tend to think that Daenerys is going to have a female coalition. Queen of the Apocalypse, as we said, and that there'll be women in power in the majority of the regions, one of which will be the Reach. I think Olenna will be still in power there.
That'd be
and
cool.
We'll reach out to Daenerys, so we'll see about that.
It could be Marjorie, though Marjorie being queen, of course, if she loses King's Landing and survives that, then she would be in charge of,
by the way, the gist of the Jonathan Pryce quote was that there was a scene that was just unbelievable, and it'll take place at the Great Sept, and practically everyone is said to be present there. And he says the High Sparrow has grown overconfident, basically, which generally he gives like a bit more about it. but I think that says enough.
That says too much. Some of these actors just give away off the plot, don't they?
Yeah, they can't help it, can they? So that at least it's somewhat vague, but we'll see. This could be the I choose violence scene. It might be, you know, them Lancel and others are coming to collect her because she didn't show up, and she's like, nah. You go ahead and fight the mountain, and we'll see what happens. And so, Yoke Boy, we could get our moment. We could finally get some mountain kicking some ass action, full-blown mountain action instead of these teases we've gotten.
I can't believe it still hasn't happened. It's just a carrot on a stick, isn't it?
Seriously, they're teasing the hell out of us with this. Now, Watchers on the Wall showed us a photo of, it's on their website, Marjorie being released. She's wearing her full queenly raiment. She's got the crown back on. She's hugging Olenna, but Septa Unella is standing there.
Septa Supreme.
Septa Supreme. Shame, shame. Shades of Cersei to Dance with Dragons. This is pretty important. I'm not sure. This is something that, this detail has slipped by some people. At the end of A Dance with Dragons, Cersei is still under guard by the Faith, even though she lives back in the castle. She's got Septas with her at all times. She's got handmaidens that sleep with her and get rotated out so that Cersei can't corrupt them. They're like all virgins or something. It's just really weird, but also totally in line with how the Septas and Septons work, how the Faith works.
It's funny because Cersei did, sleep with another woman.
That's true.
Correct. Maybe corrupt her in that sense.
That's true. Tana Merriweather, right?
Yeah, thinking of her. So it's good to be careful who you put in her bed.
Exactly. So it's pretty funny. So this could be what we're seeing. Marjorie may think that she's getting out of the clutches of the Faith, only to find that the High Sparrow is keeping her, keeping his claws in his talons, rather. That's what sparrows have in her, even though she's still, getting to go back to the Red Keep, etc. So that definitely bears watching, and is looks like that plot line is really going to blow up, if not next episode, and the episode after.
Now to do something that we forgot to do at the beginning of this segment, which is what the synopsis and title will be.
Right.
The title is The Broken Man. Striking title to anyone who read the books, obviously. The synopsis is: the High Sparrow eyes another target. Jaime confronts a hero. Arya makes a plan. The North is reminded.
Because I think we just pretty much broke down that High Sparrow part. Jaime confronting a hero is pretty straightforward. It's Blackfish. Arya makes a plan. We talked about what she needs to do, but the plan itself, we have no idea what she's going to actually do. The North is reminded. Well, there's a lot of scenes of Sansa and Davos and Jon. Jon isn't doing any talking. It's Sansa and Davos that seem to be doing the talking. But what we're seeing is them trying to recruit Northern Lords, and we see them all at the Mormont Hall, and we see them all at the Glover's Hall, and we see them all talking to the Wildlings, and we see Tormund arguing with fellow Wildlings that if we don't support Jon after he supported us, we're cowards. And so this reminder, what does it mean? Reminding that Sansa's out there, that the Starks are out there, or is it going to be Ramsay doing something nasty to Rickon, reminding them that who's in charge, that kind of thing, trying to be authoritative along those lines. You guys have any thoughts on that? Anyone?
I can't remember if you mentioned it just now, but that we don't see any sight of Melisandre.
No, Melisandre. You're right. No shot of Melisandre in any of those scenes either, which is a bit curious. I wonder what she's up to.
Yeah, I wonder.
She did leave with them, right? She did leave.
It looked like it. If I remember correctly, there was a big caravan, and Brienne and Podrick left with them though.
Yeah.
Because they were all going down the road, and they could split off. So
she's probably not someone you want around when you're trying to convince people to join your cause in the North. We've got this woman from Ashai who burns children,
brings people back from the dead,
and she worships, some other god here.
Another quick thing, back to the Arya thing, is that there's a shot from Watching the Wall again that shows her gazing at the Titan. I mean, a really beautiful photograph.
Yeah.
Wearing different clothing, yay.
Yeah.
It appears to be like water dancer style clothing with the, whatever it's called, and the fluffy sleeves, a la Syrio Forel. And in various preseason trailers and photos of when they were shooting, because it's pretty public, the stuff they're shooting for Arya a lot of the time. there were a lot of shots of her swimming in the water in that outfit.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems that maybe her plan has something to do with the water. Maybe she has to jump into the water to escape.
Maybe she actually dances on water.
Yeah, exactly. She's an actual water dancer.
And Arya's not actually in the trailer, but as the description of the episode and this photo reveals that her story will continue next episode. There'll be no hiatus there. So that's good.
I had something about something else that's not in the trailer. Just getting back to the north, and we'll talk about Brienne in a minute, but you mentioned it, that Brienne has left Castle Black with this group of people, and we see them, and she's not there. She's gone. We suppose she's headed for the Riverlands. But that and the title of the episode, which you just mentioned, makes me think there's some very significant thing that's been left out of the description and the trailer.
Yes. A certain broken man who show viewers will be massively surprised to see alive, but if you're familiar with the Gravedigger theory, you won't be surprised at all the possibility of a return by the Hound. So that could be that could be this next episode. Broken man. It could be next episode. Get hyped, folks. Clegane returning. Potentially.
I always find these sort of omissions to be almost as interesting because, they pointedly omit the huge things from trailers and
yes,
like this.
As they should.
So, given that, do you guys think that Brienne will be the perspective that sees this?
Yes.
You do?
And boy, that will be interesting. Yeah. Like, I fought you, and it's got a whole different angle to it than the book does.
Yes, so you guys.
Maybe Sandra will be like, yeah, she beat me. A good fight, props or something,
Thanks. Hey.
Yeah, like, thanks. Set me on this new path. So now we also have, let's talk about some other Riverlands stuff. Let's talk about Riverrun itself. We've got Edmure with a dagger at his throat. In the books, it's a trebuchet. And that plan doesn't work because they don't go through with it. It's an empty threat that we talked about earlier. So, what did Lady Gwyn, you have some thoughts on that, maybe?
I was reminded of that Edmure on the Frey Gallows, which we mentioned earlier, but that particular shot reminded me of sort of this empty threat of, we're going to hang him or we're going to throw him over. That was Jaime's empty threat, but he seems to attract empty threats. So.
That's true. The Blackfish, of course, is being the Blackfish, standing tall, not bowing down. And we know what happens in the books. He ends up having to surrender the castle because Edmure is his liege lord and orders him to. Otherwise, because Jaime threatens his child. But Blackfish escapes in the books, and we don't know where he goes specifically. And that's a whole other topic of conversation where he might be at the end of Dance with Dragons. But great quote from A Dance with Dragons that might be something shades of will be in this next episode. Lady Gwyn, take us away.
Okay, so in the preview, you see Blackfish say, "While I'm standing, the war is not over," which echoes this great line from the books, "You must be blind as well as maimed, sir." Of course, he's talking to Jaime. "Lift your eyes and you'll see that the direwolf still flies above our walls." That is just like, so
man does not give up.
Can't wait to see that defiance. We also got a little shot of Black Walder looking very nervous and
with a broken nose, right?
Noticed there's something wrong with his nose. So I wondered, because I mentioned it earlier, that perhaps we would see some sort of Merritt-like character. Maybe Black Walder could be standing in for Ryman or Merritt and fall afoul of the Brotherhood Without Banners.
Yeah. And still to come from, we expect the Freys to get a comeuppance. I'm not sure. And the idea of Black Walder maybe being caught and hung or something like that, hanged, being caught, it makes a lot of sense. But it does seem like the Freys will have at least one triumph because a preseason trailer shows Walder Frey sort of toasting his hall, standing up, looking really happy. And there's a whole group of Freys and Lannisters toasting with him, drinking to his toast. Well, that hasn't happened yet. So I feel like Riverrun will fall. Yeah. But I think that the Blackfish will probably escape like the books.
Go north, Blackfish. Go for Sansa.
Yeah, and maybe he'll hook up with Sansa, Brienne, something like that. And good things will hopefully happen from that. Now, here's a shot from the trailer that we really are confused about because it just reveals so little, but it's also very evocative. It appears to be someone walking on grass amidst corpses. We always see his feet and corpses. But it's hard to tell whose feet it is, and it's hard to tell who the corpses are. And of course, it's just grass, so we know it's not like desert. It's not the north. But other than that, Lady Gwyn, you have any thoughts?
Yeah, well, to me, we watched it over and over and over again, trying to get some details because you do see bodies lying in the grass. It looks to me like the Riverlands, the light and everything looks like the Riverlands scenes that we've seen. But the bodies don't look like soldiers, is what we finally came up with. So we think
one of them looks like a woman.
Yeah.
She looks like she's got a dress on. Looks like a villager.
So could be, the aftermath of an attack of some kind. So we're thinking maybe a Brotherhood Without Banner scene.
Yeah, a lot of good possibilities there. Hard to say, but something to be excited about and to wonder about. But moving on, we see Yara and Theon in Volantis, very clearly in Volantis. It's the Long Bridge. That's extremely identifiable, and there's a Greyjoy sail sitting right there. They're not discussing going to Dany.
No.
They're but maybe it's just because of a snippet. We're only getting a snippet.
Yeah. I think I think it's possible that, right after that conversation, they come up with the idea to do that. But it also makes me wonder, well, really, they had to go all the way to Volantis for a nearby port to get to escape from
Yeah,
this?
that's a little odd.
It's a little far, really. There's plenty of other ports in Essos that they could have reached before then. Just struck me a little odd.
Yeah.
Unless, the Volantis made sense to me, thinking that they were aiming to go to Daenerys. It's perfectly on the way.
Yeah, it's a large place, and maybe somewhere they're more welcome. It's got a huge harbor. Yeah, it is maybe a little odd, but there may be an explanation that they haven't come up with.
Exactly. We've only seen that one tiny line, so not much to say.
Okay, so we have Sam confirmed to be going to Old Town still, and why is that?
Well, again, in some of these, they're just public filming. They're doing it in cities. So in the city that Old Town's filmed in, it was confirmed to be Old Town, and there were reports of a brief scene, a very brief scene, it was said, of Sam talking to a maester. And so that leads me to believe that we'll see Sam stop at Old Town. He has to sail out of there, and he'll talk to the maesters, but he won't stay. That's what I'm theorizing, partially because it just doesn't make sense to me for him to stay in Old Town.
Yeah, unless they do some sort of Euron attacking the Reach, which seems like it has a high likelihood of being cut from the show. Yeah. But if not, that would be a sensible thing for them to sort of mash together. And like we said, we talked about the possibility of Arya. Now, Arya seems, maybe she'll come, a popular theory in the books is that Arya will join the troop, and that's how she comes across to Westeros as an actress. And maybe they go to Old Town. And there you go. We also talked about the possibility of Jorah going there. Some people thought about the possibility of Jorah using Dragonglass to stop the spread of grayscale, since that seems to be a multi-purpose tool at this point. So that's pretty interesting. And we also have the Randall Tarley actor kind of confirming in a little...
Yeah, I'm not sure if that was during filming or what, but either way, it was a funny tweet and worthy of mention. He said, so he posted a picture of himself looking happy at the seaside with sunglasses, and after the episode, and he said, "See, Randall has a soft side too. He even has a seaside." Which was just a funny little line.
Him being by the shore sounds like Old Town, maybe.
Yeah, maybe so, because I'm sure he films lots of things, but it definitely made me laugh. For
all we know, that castle that Horn Hill was used as is near the sea, and he just walked over there.
Yeah,
like that,
I don't know where. It's at Castel de Santa Florentina? I think that's what it was. In Barcelona or Barcelona, depending on how picky you are on how I say that.
Yeah.
But it was definitely Roman-looking, really gorgeous pillars. Honestly, a lot of people nitpicked on that scene. Not nitpicked, but it bothered them how large Horn Hill was. They were like, well, if that's Horn Hill, what's Highgarden look like? And I'm like, yeah, it's going to look awesome.
Look awesome. And it's like, come on, they have to use real castles here.
Yeah, it's a real
they
castle.
can't just scale that down. I didn't mind that at all.
I didn't mind it.
Just because it's big doesn't mean it's wealthier,
Yeah,
so, largeness doesn't mean
more well protected or any number of things.
So I don't mind that. I'm not complaining that people made that complaint, but I wouldn't make it. So let's do our worry of the week. I've already pretty much said mine. I'm worried about Olenna. I'm very worried about Olenna. I guess you guys aren't, so that's cool. It gives me a little more confidence that I'm wrong.
Olenna could kick anyone's ass. That's what you do.
She's actually a faceless man in disguise. She's like Pycelle. She pretends to be decrepit, but she's actually her cane is she's got a sword in there. She goes,
sword cane!
Valyrian steel cane.
Yeah.
Straight from George's collection of sword canes.
The waif, I think, belongs on there, even though I don't think any of us actually mind her being killed.
No, exactly.
I really like the actress, and I've seen people say that she's not very good. But I think her role is just to be really emotionless and cold. And I think she does it really well. So
I do too.
I kind of like her actually.
Yeah, I like her as well. Faye Marseille. I think was it the Tudors that she was in? Or
I believe so.
It's one of those historical shows. But yeah, I think she's really great. But I can see why she's also very frustrating for people to see this antagonistic relationship, and she's very eerie.
What about some other worries? Any other worries?
I guess mine is only Brienne and Pod. Not really worried, but as I feel like they're in the most danger.
Okay. Maybe Pod more than Brienne because he's...
Yeah, maybe Pod more than Brienne, although I feel like the showrunners love Pod. So.
Oh, you know something we didn't mention, by the way? We talked about Bronn, but he's in the trailer.
Yes.
So Bronn is definitely in the next episode. We were pretty sure he'd come back because Jamie talks about bringing him with him, but that's nice to have confirmation of.
Yes.
Any other worries of the week?
I'm not worried about them dying, but I mean Sam and Gilly are going to kind of have people on their back, so I'm worried in that sense. I think they're, they'll be all right, but
as long as they're
worried on some level.
As long as they're 71 yards or more away from Dickon, they should be safe. 70 yards, that's danger. 71, no problem. So we also sometimes do our armored and plot, but none of us really had.
To be honest, right now at this point, I think all the characters are armored and plot for me, like the majority. That's why I didn't really have worries of the week. So many characters, I just don't think they can die at this point.
You know what? Actually, I've got a new one. I just realized because we were worried about Loras for a long time, and now I'm not worried about Loras being killed anymore. Now I'm worried he's going to become a Kingsguard, which is not really. I'm not worried about his life, but I do think that would take him off the death list at least for now, unless he ends up going against the Mountain, which we still think could happen in some way. In fact, maybe so. Especially if the trial by combat isn't happening, according to that spoiler from Jonathan Pryce, then maybe Loras gets to dodge that bullet as well. Maybe he's set to fight the Mountain, and it doesn't happen. So we still don't know who the champion is going to be.
To put someone lying in a prison for who knows how long fighting the Mountain.
In fact, I just had a new thought. That's a good idea too. But I had that just dawned on me. Maybe that's why Cersei refuses to come, because she doesn't want Loras to die, which maybe seem odd from Cersei's point of view, but she doesn't want to screw up her relationship with the Tyrells, even though she's already done several things to screw it up. Maybe this is no, I'm not going to have this happen. Maybe Olenna wants her to do that. And of course, if that's the case, then Olenna should still be alive. So, a lot of possibilities there. Anyway, I think that's it for the episode. We're going to talk a couple more. We're going to do we're going to go a little longer and talk a little bit about Balticon. So just a minute. Most of our Balticon stuff, like we said, we're going to save for another episode. We're not sure when that will be yet because we're trying to work out the details.
We're definitely going to do our Aeron episode this weekend.
That's the big reveal. The spoiler chapter he read at Balticon was Aeron Damphair, and oh man, it was an incredible chapter. And we even had our own chapters moot. This is fun. A Baltamoot. The con was at Baltimore, but we had a Baltamoot. George we knew we were in for it, and in the good way. Because normally, Shay and I have been to several readings, and he just reads. He doesn't usually.
Doesn't often. I mean, it was an option. It was possible that he would give us a choice. And when he gives you a choice, he does it by cheering.
And he offered 3 possibilities. So once he offered 3 possibilities, we were all very confident. The energy in the room went way up because we figured out of those 3 choices, something's going to be brand new, right? Something we haven't heard before. He started by offering us Mercy, the Arya chapter. And that chapter was in 2014. And so there were mostly crickets. Some people cheered, but it was mostly just crickets.
I tend to think that some of the cheers are more for people who just want to support Arya as a character. They know she's not going to win. Cheer for Arya.
For example, I did the same thing. In a sense, and the next choice was Aeron Damphair, and oh my God, the crowd just exploded, the screams and yells, and it was just like relief. It was like, yes, finally we get it. It was so amazing. The energy in the room was incredible, and he called us all sick motherfuckers for wanting it. He called himself a sick motherfucker for writing it too. Basically.
We agreed with him.
Yeah. So, and then he also offered to read some of his fake history, some Sons of the Dragons, which was read at LunCon,
Yoke Boy was at.
Yeah, you guys.
Yeah, we've got an episode. We've got an episode on that. If you actually want to hear what Sons of the Dragon was about, if you're curious, you're at Balticon. Then episode 4, we go into it. So.
So yeah, obviously Aziz and I would be pushing for that, and I in fact had commented on George's live journal prior to the con, as I always do, pushing for Fire and Blood. I'd love to hear him read it, and it's a long way out that we'll get it. But as soon as we heard that it was Sons of the Dragon, I mean, I was relieved because I would have hated for it to be some new historical thing, and we have this choice and a slight disappointment not to get it. But so yeah, Aziz and I were sitting across the room from each other, but we both cheered for Sons of the Dragon in solidarity.
That's right.
Not because and because we knew there was no chance, 0% chance that it could win.
And there's already full transcripts out there, so
we'll be doing our episode. Poor Quentin on Twitter and Tumblr has a very accurate transcript. As we were there, we have heard it, and we can tell you that there are some minor and major errors, and there's actually quite a few transcripts going around. Which is
so we recommend Emmett
but-
Booth's Poor Quentin.
It's fortunate and
name.
unfortunate, to be clear, because obviously we want it shared with everyone, but unfortunate because George specifically asked that people don't do that.
But it's out there, and so we may as well. We're going to analyze it, and since it's out there, we want the most accurate version to be the one that people refer to. So
Poor Quentin, check him out.
Yeah.
He's got it linked everywhere.
Yeah,
so.
big shout out to him. Also, so let's talk about a few other random things we learned. Just some random bits of A Song of Ice and Fire knowledge that came out. Hat tip to our friend Kristen Reed Tredo, who asked George a sneaky question and got an answer that was kind of unexpected. She asked, will we ever learn how Duncan the Tall relates to Brienne of Tarth? So she worded it in a way that made it sound like we already knew that connection existed. She may have tricked George into giving a straight answer, because George hasn't actually revealed. I mean, he's hinted at it heavily that that connection is there, and there's a lot of textual evidence, which we can't really get into right now. We don't have time for that. But there's a lot of textual evidence connecting Dunk to Brienne, the main thing being the shield that Dunk carries around is the same shield that Brienne ends up carrying around. And, of course, their size, both referred to as thick as a castle wall, these other things.
No True Knight.
No True Knight. Yeah, there's a lot of things that connect them.
But a True Knight, very much so, but yes.
But George said yes. He said, yes, we will learn that. Eventually, all things in good time. So he basically confirmed that connection, widely believed, to be fair. We kind of already knew, but weren't 100% sure. It went from 99% to 100%, which is a huge that's a huge percentage point, going from almost sure to 100% sure.
Yeah, I think Kristen confirmed that one of George's minions did confirm that he meant it as a confirmation. Could I say confirm again in one sentence?
A confirmed confirmation.
A lot of people were doubting it. I saw in comments, like, that's not what I meant.
Why would you doubt that?
No, it's pretty clear.
We know Kristen personally, and she is, she's not one to get the wording wrong. She's not one to be fast and loose with exactly what he said and how she asked the question. So I have very much a lot of confidence in that, especially because we already thought it was true in the first place. Another thing George confirmed, which he's already confirmed in the past, but maybe not everyone is aware of this. Some people think that that Westeros, Planetos, whatever your favorite term is, Taros, Martin World, whatever you want to call it, GRRM World, is part of George's 1,000 Worlds thing, where he has a universe where he has some other books that are all set in this 1,000 Worlds. And some people think maybe there used to be a sci-fi setting in Westeros long ago, and this is part of 1,000 Worlds.
Oh, my God. I mean,
I hate it. And George says, no, I'm glad that this is gone on. I usually don't hate theories.
Why do people keep pushing this one? It's not even very good.
Yeah. No, it's not very good. And to be clear, I think myself and probably the rest of us enjoy shared universes, and they're done well. But they mean to do them. And George has said no, and I just don't get where people get this idea.
Why? And it's not one of the things he would lie about. Like, again, he doesn't lie. And if he did, why would he lie about this? Like, it's not going to come up in the books probably. Like, oh, look at that. Like, there's
no, because it would be a kind of like little thing for hardcore fans, wouldn't it? It's not like a game changer that he wants to keep secret.
Yeah, exactly.
Why on earth people would think that he'd lie about this? I don't know. Like I said, I think it's a pretty awful idea. sorry if I offended someone.
Yeah, we don't mean to offend anyone if you like that theory.
Yeah, if you liked it, no worries.
I mean to offend. I am not a fan of it, but we get a little, it's theories are fine. Everyone's welcome to their own theories, and we shouldn't argue with each other about favorite theories. But if George says it's not true, come on, guys. It's not true. For me, it's like you get your question to ask George. You should research what questions he's been asked before. You should read all the SSMs, and this was a fairly recent thing to happen.
It's a rare opportunity to ask a question to George.
And this is one he's just been asked, and I'm sure it's frustrating for him.
He was asked the same every Q&A we've been to. Someone asked him who his favorite character every single time.
Every time they ask him what his thoughts are on Game of Thrones.
And it's just really annoying.
Or what character he most relates to.
Yeah.
And he always, in other words.
Yeah, he always says his favorite character is Tyrion. The one he relates to is Sam. We've heard that answer a million times. For once, George, and we've seen George get irritated at it. He's like, he's answered it before the question was even done. This time he was in such a good mood, maybe because the con went really well for him. You know, he did have a lot of fun. He seemed to be having a lot of fun on stage because there's some other events. There was like a liars event where different authors tried to lie to the audience. It was a charity event. If they were caught in a lie, they had to put $10 in the booth. And anyone challenging him and if he's wrong, they have to put $1 in.
It was Balticon 50, so there were a lot of, of people from the fandom, from the convention fandom that have known for years, authors and artists and things like that. So I'm sure it was a great time for him.
It's also fairly close to his home. His original home is in Bayonne, New Jersey. He's got some local friends there. Yeah. So it makes sense that he'd be in a better mood than usual.
Yeah, he generally definitely seemed pretty patient, I thought, as much as maybe some people reported that he didn't want to talk to Song of Ice and Fire, but
he was into the chapter. He was really, he was reading it. He was like, really into it, having fun, like doing voices for some of the characters and really feeding off of our reactions. And when he started reading, he said, this is, in a way, this is what it's all about. We're here to talk, it's interesting to interview authors and to meet them and to interact with fans, but really it's all about the stories. And that was a great way to segue into reading that chapter because it's like, it is all about the stories. And this story is our life.
So there was something else confirmed there about a Wynn's POV. Lady Gwyn, do you want to say anything about that?
She told someone, I think at the dinner the night before the con started,
that
he's working on a Cersei chapter, which is first time Cersei's actually been confirmed as a POV.
Yeah.
I think that was actually at the Toastmasters interview or John Picassio's interview. They said people would want to know if they want to know what you're working on. That's the big question on everyone's mind. And he said, "Well, before I left, I was working on a Cersei chapter."
It was the John Picasso interview because I didn't. I did not go.
That's
to
the one thing we missed. I think we're in the bar.
It was really good. Definitely, a lot of people were a little frustrated as we left the thing because probably over half of it was talking about award shows, which too was pretty riveting stuff. I was very interested in it. George is talkative, and John Picasso is also very charismatic. So I was riveted. I saw some people fall asleep during this interview, actually, which cracked me up. But it's a long con.
I think I was at the bar drinking beers and eating gummy bears.
Nice. Okay, so one last tidbit we learned, and then we'll say a few more things about Balticon before we say adieu for the day. There was a little bit of deep trivia here. George was asked, "Do we know who Prince Lewin Martell's paramour was?" Remember, Prince Lewin Martell was a brother to Doran and uncle to Doran. Uncle to Doran. I'm sorry, Uncle to Doran Martell, who was served in Aerys' Kingsguard and died at the Trident at the same battle Rhaegar died. He had a paramour. And people have been long wondering if she was around or if she was still alive. And George was asked, "Do we know who it is?" And he said, "Not sure." So he may not have even decided who it is yet, and he may not, or maybe he's put her on screen and can't remember if he has. Maybe she's had a brief appearance. So
it's ambiguous, isn't it? It's very ambiguous. It could be anything.
Could be anything. It's worth mentioning, however. Another question I didn't actually mention, this didn't really get much said, was a question I knew was asked. Someone we talked to said she asked what trimester Lysa Tully was in when she took the Tansy. And then she asked what herbs and things, what ingredients were in that. What other things were doing that? Because this woman was an OBGYN nurse. She had a vested interest, and George said he didn't know. He didn't know what trimester she was in, and he wasn't sure what was all in it. But he did some research onto that stuff. He just didn't know at the time.
That's the kind of question he doesn't like to be pinned down on because it's too precise in timelines.
Timelines. Yeah, try to get a straight answer. To pin it down by a matter of months. I think I can see where the question may have been coming from. Maybe.
Yeah.
although it may have been coming from somewhere else. But.
I think she was very interested in how, maybe the timeline as well, but I think she was honestly just really interested in how Moon Tea and these things to abort things work, given her career. Was my impression. She had interest in a lot of other interesting things that I wish she'd been able to ask George.
Right on. Okay, so 2 more quick things. All 4 of us, plus Jeff Hartline, a.k.a. Brendan B. Fish of Wars and Politics of Ice and Fire, we're on a panel together talking about podcasting, and that's the panel that hopefully we're going to get a recording of, and if so, we'll be able to put an episode out on it. Shay and I also did a panel on games of Game of Thrones, Song of Ice and Fire, and Game of Thrones games, computer, board games, card games, etc. It was more popular than we thought it would. People were turned away from this panel because there were too many people coming in.
We're standing up in the back, and so it's a small room. We talked about I had a list of 22 games based on the series. So that's quite a lot. I should publish it on the website. Actually, I haven't updated the website games page, and I should put this information on there. But I still forgot a couple games. I forgot the Sporkle trivia games.
Oh yeah,
which are very fun.
Well, the website will be a good place to be a repository of that stuff.
We played the Song of Ice and Fire Sporkle together. Had a great time.
Guessing the sigils, naming the characters. There's a lot of good Sporkle games.
It's a great learning tool as long as they're actually correct, which I've run into a few that were frustratingly incorrect.
Occasionally they're wrong. Yeah.
So have we. I get very angry.
But they're good. Despite a few mistakes, they're very good. They're very fun.
I heard some other people talking up, I think it's called Quiz Up, Quiz Me Up. Some people were talking about that.
It's incredible. There's so much we couldn't get it all in there, and we ran out of time in the panel anyway. We spent a lot of time on some games and less on others because some of them we just haven't played. But we'll talk about that more when we get to put out a panel, when we put out our Balticon report episode, assuming we are able to, because there is a chance we can't if the recording is just that bad or if we don't get it at all. But either way, we will be doing a Damp Hair chapter review
recording it sometime this weekend. We're hoping to do. We're not sure what day.
So patrons will get that over the course of the following week, and everyone else will get it around the following weekend. So maybe around the time of episode 8, we should be releasing it fully. But don't pin us down on that. Of course, we might run into some roadblocks. But we're fired up to talk about this chapter more. We've got a huge amount of creative energy to work on this right now because it's such a great chapter, and it's kind of pushed other things to the side for now. But got to roll with the material. New material deserves to be discussed. So
take the time, obviously, to read the chapter and send us your thoughts. You have until this weekend to get them in.
That's right. Okay, so send us questions, send us your emails. You can look for us on Twitter, Facebook. Don't forget to rate us on iTunes as well and help us get more notice out there. Lots of ways to support the show at www.historyofwesteros.com. And most stuff on the right sidebar there are various ways to support the show, but you can also just do word-of-mouth stuff. Now, before we sign off, Radio Westeros, tell everyone where to find you guys.
Yeah, come and check out our podcast if you want something that's just the books. It is radiowesteros.com. Really hope to get some new listeners.
Right on. Yeah, definitely check them out. I don't get to rush and listen to our episodes when they're done, but I'm quick on Radio Westeros episodes. It's almost the minute they come out. I'm all over it. So unless I'm saving it for some trip or something. Okay, folks. It was good to have all 4 of us back for this review, and we'll see what's up for next week. We'll certainly be back in one form or another. So, Valar Morghulis, Valar Balticonus, Valar New Chapterus, Valar Bloodus of my Bloodus. And see you all next time, folks. Thanks again.